Hey guys, welcome to part 5 of What If Naruto Was Neglected Heir of Uzumaki clan. If you enjoy the video then like, share and subscribe as it inspires me to make more such videos. So let's get started. Chapter 13. March. 11 years after the Kyubi attack. The small hall used for meetings within the main house was seeing the most people since it had been created. It usually held a few meetings with a few people in attendance, but today it was housing a handful of people who had come from other clans to be of witness as Naruto was being inaugurated to the office of clan head at the age of 18. He had become the youngest clan head in all the clans within the village hidden in leaves. He had been acting as clan head, but today they were making it official and that gave him power over the clan. If Naruto were to be honest with himself, having so many people gather at the compound was just over the top. There was no need to even celebrate. Well, he would celebrate later on with a cold bottle of sake, but these people were not his type. They were old, and there were children within the room. He couldn't be real to be himself. The new Uzumaki clan head was standing tall for someone his age. His long crimson hair hanging loose over his shoulders with some of it wrapped up by blue strand on both sides of his head so that it doesn't fall over his face. He was wearing the same shirt he had been wearing back then. The only addition to his clothing was a long dark crimson trench coat that was hanging over his shoulders. It had no sleeves and had high collars. It was zipped through the chest and parted from his lower body downwards. The trench coat had a black flame pattern along the hemline and the Uzumaki symbol on the back. "You're not really enjoying yourself, are you?" Itachi asked as he stood beside Naruto. The redhead had his eyes closed and opened them slightly as he responded to Itachi. "Not really. I'm like my mother in the fact that we both dislike this thing of formality. It is nothing more than a chore and this job will be getting me in trouble." Trouble wouldn't be that he would be getting enemies in the form of other head clan heads. He was already familiar with the clan heads as he had met them on different occasions in the past years. He had even held meetings along with his mother in this compound and in their compounds. The trouble would be the political games that were played behind the scenes and the messy affairs that the clan heads often play. Naruto would rather be thrown into the battlefield than do something so troublesome. He hated the game of politics. One could never really afford to be ignorant in that kind of game. You always had to have your poker face and some aces in your hands in case something does come up. Aces were supposed to be handled in the battlefield, not when adults were sitting behind a large table with their hands making signals under the table. Crappy games. Already he had been approached by a head clan who was all about the superiority of his clan. Naruto merely smiled and nodded along the way as the man talked his business. He listened on the key factors and ignored the other crap. Who was that clan head again? Yes, it was Heishi. At least he had been trying to clean up his act. It wouldn't be a good thing if the head of the Uzumaki clan was known as a drunk whore and other clan heads would certainly use that to undermine his word. Political games, Itachi said, knowing full that the kind was played by the clan heads. They are always battling for superiority, and you're not known to be a fan of them. You will have to be careful from now on though. If people have not found dirt on you, they will be watching your every move. That's what I hate, Naruto said with a tired sigh. The only thing I would fear is some girl going over to my father to tell him that she is expecting a young Uzumaki. That would ruin my image, the redhead said calmly. Itachi snorted. Not like you have a good image in that area. You have ruined it already, and even though you have been quiet, people won't forget easily, the Uchiha said. But you do have your fans, he added. So do you, Naruto said looking at Itachi at the corner of his partially opened eyes. This has been a lousy day. Well, I can say I am finally resting, and I haven't gotten drunk in quite some time since Azumi started drugging me to sleep. How about we get something to drink later? She has not been drugging. No one has even forced you to take those pills. In any case, we can't do anything because we have a mission later on, Itachi reminded the redhead. Naruto opened his right eye for a moment before shutting it. I forgot about that. I will also need to watch my movements from now on. My mother has been persistent about an image that reflects the values of the clan. Uzumaki wasn't the most loved of shinobis by his enemies. Because he didn't have a flea-on-sight mark on his forehead, shinobi were rather keen on separating his head from his shoulders. It wasn't like any have succeeded in trying to get the bounty on his head. He crushed all those who attempted to have a say in how long he had to live. If the non-existent kami has yet to tell him when the death god would come to fetch his soul, he would not lie down his life for enemies to take it. Just be careful with what you say, Itachi said. You may have the Uchiha at your back, but you don't want to piss off other clan heads, the Uchiha said calmly. There is no need to worry, Naruto said. Although I hate this game, I know how to play it. I just hate how taxing it is, the redhead said, walking away from Itachi. We will talk after, Naruto said. Itachi merely watched as the redhead slowly walked away. Who was he telling to be careful with what he said? Naruto would most likely not say anything. Since they were in this ring, he was likely just going to be quiet throughout and speak when he was asked something. But since it was his day, he was going to be asked a lot of questions. Itachi-san, the Uchiha looked to his right as Azumi walked up to him. The former teen now turned into a beautiful woman. How many times has he heard people complimenting her beauty and grace? The Uchiha shook his head as he cleared his head of such thoughts. Azumi-san, the Uchiha greeted Naruto's handler in a calm tone. You have dressed for the occasion, he said, looking at the traditional kimono the woman was wearing. It is a big occasion, although Naruto-sama doesn't act like it is, Azumi responded with a warm smile on her lips. I should be worried for the future our clan with him in charge, but I am not. Itachi could understand Naruto hated being responsible. He was often irresponsible, but it didn't have to do with his job. When it came to his duties as a shinobi of Konoha, the redhead gave it his all and was never complaining. Well, for someone who has seen a lot, there was little he could do wrong in his duties. But of course he tended to ignore responsibilities that were forced on him, and he wasn't really sure how the redhead would deal with his job. I'm sure he will do his best for the clan, Itachi said. He just needs to stop being careless with his behavior. It won't be good for the image of the clan if Naruto continues in the way he has been living. Azumi nodded. If it wasn't because of the fact that he is a great shinobi, our image would be in tatters right now, she said with a shake of her head. Well, at least he has been quite. People don't forget that easily. While Naruto was respected in the shinobi world for his achievements and power, his behavior outside the battlefield left little to be desired. Most shinobi don't mind as he is merely enjoying his life and his way of coping with the demands of the shinobi life. People coped in different ways, but Naruto's desirable. Azumi had made a good move by giving him those drugs. He was coming around these days, but it was mostly because he spent his days doing missions. Naruto gave me this, Azumi said, giving Itachi a scroll. What is it? The Uchiha asked. He suspected that the redhead didn't give it to him himself because he didn't want the eyes that were around the room to be looking all over them. But there could have been some other time to give him the scroll. Besides, it wasn't like the relationship between the Uzumaki clan and the Uchiha was a secret to anyone. People had known when Naruto was inducted in the military police force despite the Uchiha never allowing anyone outside of their clan into the force. Itachi even wore the same shirt as Naruto did, so did his younger brother and some other members of the Uchiha clan. A contract with the military police force. You do know that Naruto has been handling clan matters since the year began, right? Azumi asked, earning a nod from Itachi. Your father requested him to draft an agreement between the two clans on the sale of some seals. I will name one, chakra suppression seals. Itachi nodded as he pocketed the scroll. The clan made money through selling seals. It was their specialty and no one could take that crown from them. They sold explosive tags and other harmless seals to the merchants in the village and other villages. High-ranked seals demanded a hefty fee, and since seals were the only way the clan made its money, they were rather secretive on the formulas of their work. I will make sure my father gets this, Itachi said to Azumi. The redhead woman nodded, and bowed slightly and walked away from the Uchiha. As Itachi looked at the woman, Mikoto walked up to Itachi and spoke. She is a delightful girl, isn't she? Itachi looked at his mother for a moment before looking away. He really didn't like having this kind of conversation with his mother. She did bother him about it, and his father had mentioned it once. They had not talked more about it as they usually just talked business amongst other things. Naruto says so, Itachi finally said to his mother. Naruto knows when a girl is nice, Mikoto said. Even though we are not really allowed to marry outside of the clan, we can make comprise for you, especially since you're male. You can say it is done to strengthen the ties with the Uzumaki like how the Senju did it back then. Itachi looked at his mother. Was she just suggesting that she organize a marriage between him and Izumi? What was the woman thinking? He wasn't thinking about such a thing. He did see her point there. Even though Izumi wasn't an Uchiha, if she was married by an Uchiha, she would give birth to an Uchiha child who was capable of awakening the Sharingan, so there would be no fears of the blood dying. The Uchiha blood was dominant, so it would dominate the Uzumaki genes, and the child born would resemble a child born of Uchiha parents. Naruto wouldn't appreciate that, Itachi said, more or less to stop his mother from saying anything further to the conversation. He can be reasoned with, Mikoto was quick to say in a firm tone. I'm not getting any younger, you know. I want to see grandchildren before I die. Kushina will see one soon enough. I wouldn't be surprised if there are a few at the end of the year. Itachi couldn't help but agree with his mother's statement about the possibilities of Naruto being a father already. The redhead hadn't been careful in his meetings with women. Itachi shook his head and looked at his mother. Not now, mother, he said and walked away. Mikoto sighed. An arranged marriage will do, the woman said to herself. Don't be saying things like that in public, Kushina said as she walked up to her friend. You know, some people can read lips, and I'm not sure Itachi would approve. My son would certainly refuse if I arrange one for him, the woman said with a frown. At least he likes girls, Mikoto said. I blame that perverted Drea for it, Kushina said firmly. But at least I don't have to worry about having grandkids. He isn't setting a good example on his sister though. I wonder what the poor girl has seen in his place that she no longer goes there as much as she used to. With Naruto. Naruto was in the presence of Nara Shikaku and Hayashi, with the two presenting their heirs. This is my youngest daughter, Hanabi. The young girl bowed slightly as she spoke. A pleasure to meet you, Uzumaki-sama. Naruto merely smiled at the young girl. She wore the expression that made him itch. It was the usual Hyuga look. He was already familiar with the story that the younger girl had been made heiress of the clan because the girl he had saved was weaker than her and too gentle to be ruler of the Hyuga clan. Politics of the Hyuga clan, but Naruto wasn't going to get into that, or about their use of the caged bird seal. I pleasure to meet you too, princess, Naruto said calmly, his eyes still partially opened. The girl looked at him curiously as she tried to peek into his eyelids to see his eyes, but the redhead merely smiled. I was hoping to see the girl I saved. How is your older sister? There was something that resembled a smile on her lips. It was barely noticeable, but Naruto saw it. She is fine, the young Hyuga said. She sent her thanks. Tell her she can give her thanks in person. I would be more than willing to make time to see her, Naruto said. Hanabi looked as if she was trying to ask permission from her father. Naruto didn't get what on between them, but finally responded. I will pass the message. Isn't she a little too young? Shikaku said, a bit purposefully. Naruto laughed. I haven't seen her to say so, the redhead said, earning a heated look from Hayashi. Naruto laughed. I'm joking, Hayashi-san. I will admit that the young ones are growing a little too quickly. Didn't you as well? Shikaku offered. Naruto had his first kill when he was around 7 years old, and went into the battleground of a war when he was just 12 years old. It may have been a civil war, but a war is a war, and there is a lot of blood in that kind of battlefield. The redhead had entered that battlefield along with his father. He had watched his father shed blood of many in seconds, and he had shed blood of about 100 with his own jutsu. The Uzumaki clan head had also grown too fast. For a 12-year-old to have more 100 of kills under his belt was not normal. Even if it were times of war, it wasn't normal. But the redhead had done it in this time, and had come out of it. A lot of people did question his sanity, but he seemed to be doing alright, and there have never been a moment where he did something that made his adoring people worry about him. You got me there, Naruto said with a smile. I do feel like 40-year-old man though. Experiences have not been lacking, and I have had so many that even some people who have reached the actual age have not experienced the things I have. You've had a lot to deal with, Heishi said. Your behavior outside of your shinobi life is despicable though, and those experiences cannot be excused as a valid reason to live in the way you do. The disgust was evident in his tone and expression. Your work has nothing been short of miraculous though. If you didn't do these despicable things, you'd be a role model to other children. I'm not a fan of the Uchiha, but I understand why parents love and praise you for your role as a shinobi, but when it comes to a role model, they pick the Itachi-san. I would follow the same path as well. That was just an insult of the highest degree. For the Hyuga to speak highly of an Uchiha, and even add that he would pick Itachi as the role model of his children. The man hated the Uchihas. Perhaps hate was a strong word, but he wasn't fond of them, and had never for once spoke praises about them and their clan. He always had something to criticize them about. Yet even so, Naruto just smiled. I will take the compliment, Heishi-san. As troublesome as it is to get control over some things, I will try to be better. Well, not that you need to hear that anyway, the redhead said, kneeling down to face the young boy in front of Shikaku. I would rather you take the criticism as well, Heishi said in stern tone. And don't go anywhere near my daughter. I've never been accused of being a pedophile, and what would that make me if I'm chasing girls my age? I don't go around chasing after women, the redhead said. There is a saying, good and bad are just two faces of the same coin. It makes sense when you look at it in this way. We are all humans, but there is good and bad in all of us. Whether corrupted or pure, we are humans. A flip of the coin turn, a pure heart can turn into an impure heart. It all takes just a second, a minute, one experience, and everything changes. He paused for a moment. There is an accepted standard of conduct that acts as a guide on how we must live. Some people choose to follow the law, and some people choose to follow the principles of their hearts. Which is wrong, and which is right? The law is right, and that is what should be followed, Heishi was quick to respond. When we do not follow the law, we are ungoverned and will only act uncivilized. Naruto shook his head. The law is both right and wrong, and own principles are both right and wrong. Do you know why? Shikamaru looked at the face in front of his. It gave him a cold feeling. It wasn't because the words coming out were cold. No, they were calm, but the fact that he couldn't see the eyes behind those eyelids made him experience the feeling. They were not fully closed, they were open just barely, but he couldn't really see. The Nara slightly shook his head and responded to the question, seeing that Naruto was asking him. The law was created by people who were guided by their own principles. It isn't always that the law is correct. It isn't flawless and perfect. The same can be said about our principles. That is why we will sometimes do the wrong things, and sometimes we will do what is right, the Nara said. Naruto smiled and stood up. How very like a Nara, the redhead said. Shikamaru, am I correct? Yes, Shikamaru said. He figured the only reason a person like Naruto knew his name was because he had heard about him from his younger sister. Shikaku smiled. Despite all his faults and everything that came with him, Naruto hasn't been accused of being an idiot in the past years. For someone in his position, he could not afford to be stupid. If he was, he would have died already. The world was a dangerous place for stupid people. Thank you for coming, Shikaku-san, the redhead said, turning away from the Nara and his son. Follow me. I'm told you have business with me, the Uzumaki said to the Hyuga. Heishi nodded and followed Naruto to the room next door. Although they were next door and the walls were thin, they could not hear a thing coming from the other room. The room was also small and neatly kept, and had a pleasant natural fragrance about it. Naruto sat down with his legs folded and motioned for both Hyugas to do the same. They sat in front of him with a small distance in between. Naruto was not smiling and his eyes were still not fully opened. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but can we do this quickly? I have another meeting after this, and I need to rest afterwards. I have to leave the village later on, the clan head said calmly. Hayashi nodded. I understand, he said. We had an agreement with your mother about the caged bird seal. There has been a lethal amount of animosity between the main family and the branch family. Naruto was tempted to ask the man what he thought would happen if he was doomed to play a puppet just because he was born a second later than his twin. But he did not wish to make enemies of the Hyuga. He merely nodded. So I've heard, he said. Then, you must know the deal, Hayashi said. Even though you were still young, you were there when we discussed it. Naruto didn't change his expression when he responded. I wasn't listening to anything that was being said that day, the redhead said calmly. But I did look into the deal. I must ask though, is it simply the animosity or has something changed your mind about the way you conduct your clan matters? Hayashi seemed to think about it for a few moments before he responded. The Hyuga clan has business interests in different places. We have treaties with other clans outside of this village. But recently, it has been hard to do business. Some people value blood and family before anything, and the treatment of the branch family has become notorious. We are even losing face within this village as well. Some villagers are looking at us with contempt over the relationship. Naturally, this is causing our power to decline and hurting our image. Naruto stared at the man for a moment before responding. I thought you'd say something like you want things to change between you and your brother. Despite everything, you are twins. Uzumaki have their way of doing business. Doesn't matter though. We will have to draw a new agreement. What? We already have a signed agreement. With the previous clan head, Naruto said. Didn't you read the fine print? Your all-seeing eyes should have looked into that. I'm not bound by agreements signed by my predecessor. All contracts are open to review. I can't annul them though. Why are you doing this? I had agreed with you mother and father about everything. Hayashi said with narrowed eyes. You misunderstood me. I'm not saying we not follow through with the agreement. I'm saying that we will have to review it. You have to understand that things have changed over the past years. We are just going to add a few things, Naruto said in a firm tone. You can have the seal sent over by tonight so we can look at it over as a sign that I intend to follow through the agreement. Hayashi nodded. When will we discuss the new terms then? When I return from my mission, Naruto said. Hayashi nodded and said his thanks before walking away. Azumi opened the door and entered after the Hyuga had left. She sat down beside Naruto and spoke. Handled things. He nodded. Our clan is a little too small though. Our money is made through seals, but with the sealing core gone, we have hit a wall. I have looked at your proposal, and will do something about it. I have also found a new way to make money, the redhead said. How? We will use the land we abandoned, Naruto said calmly. Farming will do, and since it is surrounded by sea, hotels will do. We use our control over the sea for fishing. That will generate enough money for us to secure our future. The clan doesn't have enough money for all that, Azumi said. Itachi and I have collected bounties of over 100 million in the past years. It will be a start. Loans will do as well. Something like that will also need ships. He paused for a moment. Kiri will help with that. I will get started on the loans. Will you talk to the Mizukage? Naruto nodded before standing up. You handle Inoichi. I'm going to the gravesite. Azumi's lips turned upside down into a sad smile. Are you going to see her? The redhead nodded. It somehow isn't it? I do not visit them, but I have not visited my fellow clansmen who were slayed by the Akatsuki. She was not even my family. I think I have taken the habit of Kakashi. That is because you two blame yourselves for what happened, Izumi said. Are you sure you want me to see Inoichi-san? Wouldn't it be somehow? Naruto shrugged. I have already spoken to him before. It should be fine. That said, the redhead disappeared in a burst of flames. Later. Academy gates. Naruto was standing at the gates along with Itachi. The two were waiting for their younger siblings. It was something that they did when they were in the village. Since their time was limited, they never got much time to spend with their families, so they made use of every little time they got. I wonder if by the time they get out things will be alright, Naruto said in thought. Unlikely, Itachi responded calmly. The Fire Nation is safe, but other nations have increased their presence in their borders in order to corner us, but we have protected our allies and stayed strong. The rumors of Kumo and Iwa working together may be true. Given everything that has happened over the years, it would be understandable. Konoha has not grown weaker by any means. The village may be holding out to avoid war with other hidden villages when they provoked them day and night. The Yondaime Hokage had said that Konoha wouldn't start a war even though they were being provoked to start it. But that didn't mean that they were just sitting back as other villages attacked their shinobi and watched their borders like hawks. They were defending themselves in such a way that they didn't have to worry much about anything. Still, one had to ask, how long would they keep at it? Even though Itachi hated war, he understood that things could not be solved lightly and a war was on the cards. Kumagakure, Naruto said in thought. I've not had fond memories of that village. Well, you dominated their Chunin exams and brutalized their finalist in the final battle in their own village, Itachi pointed out. You also killed their Jonin commander. That couldn't be helped though, the Uchiha added. That girl was rather skilled. I was a little ticked off that she had forced me to use my trump card, Naruto responded calmly. I wonder how she has grown. She still owes me a date. Itachi shook his head. Still, he didn't think that Naruto and Kumo would really get along. The village had once tried to kidnap his mother and that incident nearly kidnapped a Hyuga, which ended up with the village putting Naruto in their bingo books. After the Chunin exams, which Naruto dominated despite taking part in the exams without a team, they had only grown to hate the redhead when it became known that he had killed their Jonin commander. They had demanded Naruto's head after the exams, but of course Minato had refused. In turn, Kumo blocked all their trade routes from his side, and any other village he was allied with. It was an angry move from the Raikage, but since Minato had refused to budge when his son had been merely protecting himself, Kumo had done the extreme. Things didn't get better because after that, Naruto went to Kiri and danced in the battlefield along with his father. He demonstrated the use of a fearsome jutsu that allowed him to move as fast as the Hiraishin. The combo the two made with their jutsus led to a fear that swept the Yondaime Mizukage's forces, and when both Kumo and Iwa heard of it, they were updating their bingo books. She is a Jinchuriki, you know, Itachi said of the person Naruto fought in the Chunin exams at Kumo. And I'm sure after that battle, she isn't fond of you. Naruto waved his right hand dismissively. I have rather good communication skills. I'm sure we can work things out, the redhead said in thought. Once again, Itachi shook his head. Oni-sama, Karin called as she ran towards her brother. Naruto smiled, opening his eyelids halfway as he kneeled down. Niko-chan, the redhead said to his younger sister as he picked her up from the ground and placed her on his shoulders before he stood up. You're all messy. Got into another fight. Kind of. Karin responded quietly. Naruto sighed. What was it this time? They were saying bad things about Oni-sama, the girl said firmly. Naruto shook his head slightly. I blame your mother for your violent behavior. At least this time she won't say I am the bad influence, the redhead said. But I'm happy that you'd protect your brother's honor. There was a snort behind them, it was coming from Sasuke. Karin was first to speak. Got something to say, Uchiha? She demanded with a glare. There isn't much honor to speak about, the younger Uchiha said. They were telling the truth, although it was mixed with exaggerations, there was some truth in what they were saying, the Uchiha said. I did see it myself after all. Itachi raised an eyebrow. What did you see, Sasuke? He was being beat up by a black-haired woman in broad daylight and in the middle of the streets. It was embarrassing given that he had just his pants on, Sasuke responded. That, he pointed at Karin, was just angry that they said her brother was pathetic and not as great as people said he was. Itachi's expressionless eyes stared at Naruto for a few moments. Can't you sink any lower? That was months ago and it was Kurena. You know, I haven't been doing anything lately. The redhead said to the Uchiha before turning his attention to his sister while walking away. Let me go treat you to ramen for standing up for me, okay? Karin nodded with a wide smile. Itachi watched the two walk away with a shake of his head. He didn't even call out to the redhead to tell him when they would meet later on, he just hoped the Uzumaki hadn't forgotten. Ni-san? Itachi looked at his younger brother and smiled when he saw the questioning look he was receiving from the raven-haired. Sorry, he said. I was just thinking about something, he said. How was the academy today? Sasuke smiled, taking his brother's hand, and began to explain how things went during the day. Later. Hokage office. Minato looked at his Tsun with a smile. The other things aside, Naruto had really grown into a fine shinobi, one of the best the village has seen. He represented the Uzumaki in his fighting and the village. How he wished the redhead was better in handling his personal. It was a mess, and nothing a parent would be proud of. Although it was better than insanity, Minato wasn't overly satisfied. There was really nothing he could do. Especially when he couldn't even start the subject. Sorry, I couldn't be there earlier, Minato said, trying to start up a conversation with Naruto. With a lot of mission requests, it is harder these days to take time off. Naruto nodded, he understood that. He was a shinobi and not blind to everything that was happening. He could even see the mountain of paperwork the man was dealing with even now. There was no need for you to be there, the redhead said. Even so, I'm your father. I should have at least been there even though I was not needed, the Yondaime Hokage said. You do know that taking up the role officially means that you get a seat in the village's council, right? I wish I didn't know, Naruto said. Well, with my shinobi duties, it's not like I am forever going to be present anyway, the Uzumaki clan head said. Possibly, Minato said with a nod. Can you sit down, Naruto? There is something that we have to discuss. Naruto looked at his father's expression for a moment. He nodded and settled down. Minato looked curiously. How do you even see everything like that? He was talking about the fact that Naruto rarely fully opened his eyes. They were always barely opened, that you could only see a hint of blue. Perhaps it was because he knew Naruto's eyes were blue. But he would not be surprised if someone said they have not seen Naruto's eyes. Your clan is dying out, Minato said calmly. You know that? Right. Naruto nodded. The loss of the Sealing Corps was unfortunate, and some of our members were killed off when going out of the village to handle business. There are just a handful of them left, the redhead said. There are laws in the village that will force you to make sure that what happened to the Senju doesn't happen to you, Minato said. What do you think of Izumi? Naruto tilted his head to the side and opened his right eye slightly. What are you getting at, father? We don't live forever and nobody actually knows what will happen tomorrow. You have already grown, you should think about marriage. With Izumi? It will preserve the Uzumaki blood. Your mother has already made arrangements with other members to make sure that the Uzumaki blood doesn't become extinct, Minato explained a bit too quickly. Naruto closed his eye and looked up into the ceiling for a moment. I'm too young to be forced into marriage. It is a responsibility and my track record doesn't really make a better candidate for marriage, the redhead said. Before anything could be said, Itachi knocked at the door before he entered. With the Uchiha present, Minato put on a serious expression. Your mission is to head to the land of hot water. I received a tip from Drea that Orochimaru is heading there with his forces. You two have to make sure he doesn't advance, and kill him if the opportunity represents itself. I will not return to the village after the mission, Naruto said. I have to head to Kiri and I must see Uzu. Why? Clan matters. You know our finances are poor. I have to make a plan to improve that. This trip will help with that, Naruto said. Minato frowned but nodded. But Itachi can't go. We can't afford to have both of you disappearing for longer periods, and I'm afraid you may end up having too much fun in Kiri and forget that you have your duties. I will return as soon as I can, Naruto said, standing up. Land of hot water. Night. Naruto and Itachi had traveled across the borders of the Fire Country and made it towards the land of hot water during night. Their mission would begin early morning. The opponent this time was supposed to cross the borders of the country early morning, so they would be well rested before the fighting, because there definitely would be some fighting that would need to be done. I will secure the parameters since we don't even know if this is a trap or not, Naruto said to Itachi as the Uchiha readied a tent. Itachi nodded. That will be best, he said in agreement. We are dealing with Orochimaru, and although Drea's information is valuable and credible, sometimes he can also be caught in the enemy's trap, the Uchiha said. Looking at Naruto with his Sharingan, Itachi dived into his thoughts. He could never really understand how the redhead was even able to see. It was night, and there was no moonlight to clear their path, and yet Naruto's eyelids remained in their place, leaving his eyes barely visible. How could he even see? It had started when he returned from his mission in Kirigakure. He had shed blood of about 100 of shinobi during the mission, and at the age of 12. That mission had changed him, and even though Itachi has had his number of enemies, he didn't have the number of kills as Naruto did. There was no record of it. It was just a fact that made a difference in their lifestyles. Will you be able to navigate? Itachi asked the redhead, knowing that his way of securing the parameter needed for him to be able to see to set things in motion. I'm used to this, so it will be fine, Naruto said as he created 5 clones. He gave each clone a special kunai, and they all disappeared in different directions. Naruto waited for a few moments before taking a few steps away from Itachi and took out a kunai. He embedded the kunai on the ground before doing several hand seals and slammed his right hand on the ground. 5 marks spread through the ground into the locations the clones had taken. It took a few moments, but more marks attached to the kunai next to Naruto. The redhead stood up and looked up into the sky before speaking. I have secured the area around us, the redhead said. Your use of this seal really is useful, the Uchiha said. We don't have to stay up all night keeping watch in case something happens or comes up, Itachi said as he settled down on a log. Naruto settled down across the Uchiha and took out a small sheet and placed it between the two before summoning wood sticks. He snapped his fingers, and the sticks burst into red flames. You think Orochimaru will be in the group? Possibly, Itachi said. It is possible that he is merely taking out his experiments for a test run. He has been doing that recently. It is really despicable. I wonder why we even continue to allow him to exist, Naruto said in thought. Oh well, we just have to stop these people from crossing the borders of this country. If we allowed something to happen, it would not reflect kindly on us. The villages that depend on us for protection will question if we are able to protect them even with Kumo and Iwa on our shoulders. We need to stand strong, Itachi said. These allies we have support us financially, and we are able to keep afloat, because really without any finances, we won't be able to survive. Clear enough, Naruto said. What do we do if we come across Orochimaru? The information given to us doesn't say much. There is just the fact that Orochimaru's forces will be crossing the borders, and we have to stop them. Reasons don't have to be asked. We just have to stop them. Kill Orochimaru if he appears, the Uzumaki paused for a moment before responding. How do we deal with it if we are facing him? They were not going to underestimate Orochimaru even though they were powerful themselves. The despicable snake was a Sannin, and that was something that was respected in the shinobi world. I would prefer not to take him alone. But you are more suited, and fight your best when facing against large numbers. I will hold Orochimaru while you deal with the numbers. Once you're done, we can deal with him together. That will maximize the chances of killing him. Naruto nodded, agreed. Then, the redhead said. Morning. Land of hot water borders. Naruto was sitting on a tree branch, waiting for Itachi to return. They had woken up a bit early to do some scouting of the land into the sound and the hot water Naruto had taken hot water, and Itachi had taken sound. They had to first confirm the location of their enemies before setting out and planning on how they would go about it. A couple of crows appeared beside Naruto and formed Itachi's upper body. I have located them. There are about 20 shinobi. They are being led by Orochimaru's number 2 and an unknown man. There is no sign of Orochimaru though. Where are you? Face the direction of the borders and head 10 o'clock. I am about 2 to 3 minutes away. It will depend on how fast you move. Naruto nodded and took off. With Itachi? Kabuto smiled as Itachi appeared before him and the shinobi that were behind him. It was just as Orochimaru had predicted. With anything that concerns the Sannin, the Yondaime Hokage would send his best soldiers in order to tackle the problem, and who was better than Itachi to come before him? Sending other shinobi would only be sending them towards their deaths. It was just a death sentence. Kabuto pushed his glasses up and took out his bingo book. Uchiha Itachi S-rank shinobi of Konoha, currently acting as Jonin and a former Anbu captain, a prodigy of the Uchiha clan, and awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan at the age of 12. The former root spy stopped there, seeing no benefit of saying anything further. Itachi merely stared with his Sharingan, analyzing the enemies before him. It was not a surprise that Kabuto had stated two things that were not known to many: his rank in Anbu and the fact that we had awakened his Mangekyo at the age of 12. Orochimaru was a resourceful snake, that was a known fact. Yakushi Kabuto, Itachi stated calmly. His gear already in place, and with his sword sheathed behind him, the Uchiha took a stance. I cannot allow you to move further. Kabuto laughed slightly, he shook his head and wagged his finger. We have to wait for one more, he said with a grin. So you know I'm not alone, Itachi said, standing up straight. Of course, Kabuto said calmly. He should be arriving at any moment. That was unexpected, but not a surprise. Kabuto was good at this kind of thing. It was the main reason Orochimaru even called him into his ranks, and made him his number 2. The Sannin always recruited the best to work for him, and Itachi was not afraid to admit that Kabuto was exceptional in gathering intel. It took a couple of seconds for Naruto to land on his right-hand side. Not a party I would enjoy, Naruto said to Itachi. Yo Kabuto. You still look healthy. I was sure I wrecked pretty hard. Oh well, I can do it again. Kukukukukukuku, Orochimaru appeared out of nowhere laughing. Now that everyone has appeared, we can begin, the snake Sannin said. Naruto looked at the snake and spoke to Itachi. We will go as planned. I will divert the attention while you go after Orochimaru, Naruto said before taking off, heading straight towards the group of enemies. Fire style, Great Fireball no Jutsu. Naruto released a large fireball that sped towards the group of enemies in tremendous speed, turning the atmosphere into a heat place. Once the jutsu was released, Naruto threw 2 kunes into the large fireball. The shinobis scattered to avoid the jutsu. Naruto held a single seal, and the kunes exploded on a chain of explosion that rocked through the area, causing a column of flames to pick up. Naruto's eyes scanned around the area. Disappointing, he said. I thought I would take a coup. The redhead was trailed off when a shinobi started charging towards him. He readied himself as the shinobi shortened the distance between them. He was a little surprised when the man increased his speed and jumped into the air. He spun around above the ground and sent his right foot towards Naruto's forehead. Naruto raised his hands to block the kick. When the kick connected with Naruto's hands, it sent the redhead sliding backwards, wincing slightly. He tilted his head to the side. Interesting, he said. I thought you would find it interesting, Kabuto said as he walked behind the man who had attacked Naruto. This is Kimimaro. He has a unique ability which you will find hard to break. He is a good opponent for someone like you. Naruto looked at his hands for a moment. Why are they retreating? He asked. Times are tough, Kabuto said. You can't just throw your pieces into the battlefield. There are a lot of enemies, so these pieces must be preserved when it is possible. Besides, we want you for ourselves. There was the fact that the bait wouldn't have been enough to hold back the redhead long enough for Orochimaru to work out things with Itachi. Kabuto had little doubt that the redhead would have just cleaved through those men in a matter of seconds like his father would. So, there was no point in sending them to their deaths when nothing would be gained in the end. Kabuto didn't have to defeat Naruto, he just had to ensure that Naruto was kept busy. Well, it would be a bonus if they could defeat the redhead. Orochimaru would be most pleased by it. The Sannin had known that if Itachi was coming, Naruto would be sent as well. This was why things were done in this manner. Of course, if the Sannin's prediction had proved wrong, they could have just cornered Itachi altogether. If Naruto had appeared, it would not have been a disappointment either. There was much that could be gained by defeating the Uzumaki. Naruto straightened himself and looked at the direction Itachi had disappeared off to with Orochimaru. He looked back at Kabuto and Kimimaro. I dislike false information, the redhead said. Orochimaru definitely wants Itachi, but I won't ask why because you are only going to waste my time. I would not have told you either way, Kabuto said in thought. Then again, it changes nothing if I tell you. Kabuto paused for a moment. How does it feel though? You're often left in the shadow of Itachi. I have heard that your purpose is to be the best, and yet, no matter what you do, you cannot escape being put in the same place as Itachi and often behind his shadow. Even now, Orochimaru-sama doesn't want you, he wants Itachi. Naruto opened his right eye for a moment before smiling. Mind games. They never bore you, do they? They are always fun, Kabuto said. You're never fun though. Really, you are a bore, especially when you never change that mask of yours. Is it true that you hide your eyes because they have the look on an insane person? Naruto retrieved his sword from the sheath on his back. Talking further was not going to do him any good. Itachi was already with Orochimaru, and although he didn't doubt Itachi's abilities, he could not afford to allow these two to hold him back from joining the Uchiha in the fight against Orochimaru. The redhead looked up for a moment, before suddenly vanishing from his position. He appeared in front of Kimimaro with his sword slashing through the air as it charged towards the man's neck. The silent shinobi brought out both his hands and placed them in a cross position before Naruto's sword hit him. The sword clashed with his hands, but did not cut through. It just made a strange sound as if he had hit something hard. Naruto raised an eyebrow when his sword did not cut through the man's hands. It was rather interesting to see. Perhaps to be more dramatic, he could say it was puzzling to see. But he was certain that it was not flesh that had stopped his blade. Such was impossible. Bones burst forth from Kimimaro's elbows and the man pushed Naruto backwards slightly before he released sharp bones from the palms of both his heads. He took only of the weapons and made a move towards Naruto. He closed the distance between them and stabbed the bone on his left towards Naruto's chest. The redhead jumped back slightly to avoid being stabbed. Once he landed on the ground, his sword caught flames and darted towards Kimimaro, holding his blade with both his hands. He swung the sword from his right side, slashing through the air towards his opponent's left shoulder. The man blocked the swing by the weapon on his left hand, but the power behind Naruto's swing caused him to slide sideways. Naruto didn't attack any further. He just straightened himself, looked back at Kabuto. This is a bit troublesome, the redhead said. It requires time, and I do not have the time for this. For someone as famous as you are, you don't appear that strong. Are you trash? Kimimaro spoke for the first time. Naruto turned towards the shinobi and looked up for a second. He created a clone and sent it towards Kabuto. He sheathed his sword and took out 3 kunes. He flung all 3 towards Kimimaro, who deflected them kindly with his bones. While Kimimaro was deflecting the kunes, Naruto threw another one, straight into the ground. The kunai had an explosive tag on it, and the redhead ignited it. The tag exploded, causing Kimimaro to be blown away by the explosion of the tag on the kunai. The moment he landed on the ground, he saw flames charging towards him like a breath of a dragon. The sound shinobi braced himself by producing more bones all over his body, forming something of a shield, while his hands were folded across his face. The flames hit him dead on and did nothing but burn his upper clothing into crisp. What surprised Kimimaro were the chains that burst forth from the flames. They had come out of nowhere, and he realized that the flames had just been used to hide the chains. The chains hit his hands but did not pierce through him. They failed to do so, and instead they wrapped themselves around his body like a snake binding him. Despite his earlier surprise, Kimimaro did not look unnerved. He remained calm. "Do you think something like this will hold me down?" he questioned as he tried to tear apart the chains by producing more bones around his body. To his surprise, the chains did not budge. He frowned. "This is a first. I cannot squash you like a little bug," Naruto said with a smile. "Well, that is fine. As long as you stay there for a minute," the redhead said, his right hand already held out while his chains restrained Kimimaro. Fire style. A ball of swirling flames formed on the palm of Naruto's right hand. 5 more balls appeared on around the large wall before they began to spin around in high speeds, creating a breath of flames. Naruto didn't waste time before hurling the jutsu towards Kimimaro. The jutsu took just a second to reach the man, and when it did, it exploded in a resounding explosion of flames. The flames grew into a large dome, and Naruto didn't wait to see what had happened. He turned away with every intention of heading towards Itachi, but as he turned around, he was forced to duck under Kabuto's glowing right hand that would have cut through his throat. Naruto reacted quicker than Kabuto by slamming a small Rasengan on the shinobi's gut, sending him flying away. It didn't take a second for Kabuto to stand up, but Naruto didn't mind. The man would be busy nursing himself. He disappeared from the place, heading towards Itachi. Kabuto frowned for a moment before shrugging. "Oh well, we did enough," he said, looking at the side of the dying flames. He winced when he saw a badly burnt Kimimaro on his knees. It was a wonder how the Kaguya was still alive. A normal person would have died, or just burnt to crisp by that jutsu. He was going to need some patching up though. Like adding more flesh to his bones. The man was more of a skeleton than a human. He was alive for now, but would die eventually. Kabuto sighed and raised his right hand. Earlier with Itachi. Itachi had his Sharingan activated as he looked at the snake Sannin before him. Orochimaru looked calm and collected, and he was not afraid to even look into the Sharingan. Normal people tended to look away when they were facing him. Then again, Orochimaru was not a normal person. Everything about the Sannin was abnormal. With how things have played out, Itachi had little doubt that this had been Orochimaru's plan. The Sannin wanted to be alone with him. His plan with Naruto had been that he would deal with the Sannin, while the redhead handled the lackeys, and they would join up together after Naruto was done on his part so that they could corner the snake. "Orochimaru," Itachi said to the Sannin. "What do you want?" "Don't be so hasty, Itachi-kun," Orochimaru said, folding his hands across his chest. He noticed the Uchiha was ready for battle at any moment, but there was no need to hurry about anything. "Are you worried about your partner? Do you think he will join us quickly?" Inwardly, Itachi shook his head. Naruto's reputation when going against powerful opponents in a one-on-one battle wasn't that great. It was not that he had been defeated by anyone or even came close to being defeated. The redhead had never suffered defeat against anyone since he became a shinobi. People really didn't know much about Naruto's strength because he didn't reveal much and always preferred to end things quickly. Another problem was that he didn't engage in battles about people he didn't know about. "You people have not really seen the full extent of Naruto's power," the Uchiha said calmly. "Well, it works for him anyway. To answer your question, I am not worried about him. He will be joining us quickly." Orochimaru looked curious. Last time he faced Kabuto, he didn't do anything impressive even though he did defeat him. Naruto-kun's speciality has always been against the masses. That jutsu he uses is only useful against numbers anyway. Perhaps being an army killer fits him better. One-on-one there is nothing special. Itachi was not going to correct Orochimaru about that. There was a lot more that people didn't know about Naruto, and it was fine. Naruto hadn't failed to kill Kabuto. He could have if he wanted to. The equation was simple. Naruto just didn't want to fight Kabuto. The redhead has never been the one to being forced into a battle he isn't prepared to fight. Shall we? Itachi said, taking a stance. If you came for what I think you came for, you will fail, as you did before. Orochimaru laughed. You think so? The two darted towards the other in tremendous speed. Once the distance between the two was cut, both jumped above the ground slightly, lifting their right foot for a high kick. The two kicks connected in midair, and as they did, Orochimaru held out his right hand, releasing multiple snakes towards Itachi's face. The Uchiha flashed away from Orochimaru and landed on the ground. The moment he did so, the snake Sannin landed in front of him with only his left foot landing on the ground. His right root foot was weaving through the air, heading towards Itachi's head. Itachi ducked under the kick and tried to sweep Orochimaru off the ground, but the Sannin took off his left foot off the ground while his upper body went down. He landed on both his hands. He used them as balance with his feet slightly above the ground and twisted around, sending his feet towards Itachi's head. The Uchiha saw the attack coming and jumped into the air, went through hand seals whilst jumping. Fire style, Great Fire Dragon's Breath. Itachi released a stream of intense flames from his mouth, sending the crimson flames towards the snake Sannin, who was still on his hands. The jutsu seemingly hit the snake before turning into the small explosion of flames as it hit the ground. When the jutsu dispersed, there was no sign of Orochimaru. Great wind breakthrough. Orochimaru suddenly said while he was behind Itachi. The Sannin released powerful gusts of winds that tore through the ground as they rushed towards Itachi. The gusts caused debris all over to pick up before slamming into Itachi. The Uchiha was sent flying backwards, but was quick to recover and by flipping several times and landed on the ground. Orochimaru was on him once again. The snake Sannin came in flying, sending a flying kick towards Itachi. Itachi managed to dodge the kick by moving back slightly. Orochimaru released a number of snakes once again. Without even weaving hand signs, Itachi released flames from his mouth. The flames burnt all the snakes as Orochimaru jumped away. So, it is true, Orochimaru said with a grin. You can use Katan Jutsu without weaving hand signs, the snake said. Naruto's control over the fire element is rumored to be the greatest in anyone. Can he do it like you? Who knows? Itachi said as he went through a couple of hand seals while running towards the snake Sannin. He jumped up before releasing his jutsu. Fire style, Phoenix Flower. The Uchiha released multiple balls of flames that headed towards Orochimaru. Orochimaru vanished from the sight and appeared away from the range of the jutsu, but when he landed on the ground, his senses flared up when a kunai was weaving through the air, heading straight towards his head. Orochimaru was able to dodge it, just barely though, as the kunai cut the side of his face. Itachi flashed on the side of the Sannin a second later, holding his Kodaki with his right hand. But Orochimaru reacted quicker than Itachi. His right hand transformed into snakes, and he sent them towards Itachi's face. Itachi cut through the snakes in just one swing. But the moment he did so, Orochimaru's neck had stretched beyond the limits of a human and his head was racing towards him. The Mangekyo Sharingan came to life without Orochimaru noticing it. The snake only saw himself biting Itachi's neck. He grinned. Kukukaku- he was cut off when something happened. He realized he was in a genjutsu and he dispelled it, but only managed to dispel it fast enough to see Itachi's blade cutting through his neck. The Uchiha didn't stop there. He moved quickly towards Orochimaru's body and stabbed it through the chest before sending it crashing into the ground. Itachi stepped on Orochimaru's chest with his left foot and turned to face the head that was a feet away from him. Orochimaru, before my eyes all your ninjutsu is worthless. The snake Sannin hissed dangerously. This was an embarrassment he would not forget. He would not forget those crimson eyes looking down at him like he was a flea. Orochimaru was furious. He was angry at being looked down by a child. Someone who was supposed to be his prey no less. Itachi sensed something and jumped away. Snakes burst out from Orochimaru's neck and went out to connect with his head, and the snake snaked through the ground and went to take the position of a lizard with its tongue out. Orochimaru stood up as he saw that Itachi wasn't going to make a move, but the moment he did so, he was stabbed on the left side of his chest by Naruto, who appeared out of nowhere. Orochimaru hissed dangerously as he narrowed his eyes behind him. This was not expected. How was the redhead even able to get behind him without him noticing it? He looked unharmed even. What happened to Kimimaro and Kabuto? The redhead spoke. Oh, Sannin-like reflexes? I was hoping to get your heart, Naruto said before smiling. Where are my manners? Apologies for being late, you low-life animal. After saying that, Naruto's sword burst into flames, making a hole through Orochimaru's chest. Naruto grabbed Orochimaru's left hand as Itachi appeared beside the Sannin. The Uchiha grabbed the right hand and the two cut off both hands from the shoulders simultaneously. The snake Sannin hissed as he fled. He landed a distance away from the two. Even without both his hands and a hole on his chest, Orochimaru still smiled. Well, that was rather rude, Naruto-kun, Orochimaru said with a smile. I did N-. Orochimaru was cut off when Naruto suddenly cut the distance between them. The redhead's sword slashed through his chest in a downward slash. While he was slashing him, Naruto was going down the ground. A second later, Itachi appeared above Naruto and slammed his right foot on Orochimaru's forehead, sending the snake crashing into a tree. Orochimaru brutally crashed into the trunk of a tree with his back before falling with his face. He hissed as he lost his smile and looked up to the two while still lying on the ground. How did you get behind me without me noticing? Well, this might not be known, but I'm actually a lot faster even without the use of that jutsu. My speed rivalries that of my father when he isn't using his Hiraishin, the redhead said. He tilted his head to the side and smiled. Lying down like that suits better than walking like a human animal. Orochimaru didn't respond, his mouth hung open as hands pulled up. Naruto and Itachi watched as Orochimaru shed his skin, appearing anew. The snake Sannin stood and spoke. Well, there be a need for cha-. Orochimaru reacted quicker when he saw the movement of Itachi's eyes. He appeared a distance away. What happened to Kabuto? Alive, I don't know about the other. Even if he survived, it's unlikely he will fight again, Naruto said. I don't know about his ability, but anything can go. Well, that is if he manages to survive. Orochimaru frowned slightly. I underestimated you too, he said. We will have to do this some other time. Having said that, Orochimaru disappeared. But he didn't get far because Naruto suddenly appeared in front of him. I have been watching my father disappear and appear with his Hiraishin since I was young. Predicting this is a little tricky, but not impossible. Naruto trailed off as Orochimaru burst in a loud explosion of flames. The flames engulfed Naruto even, but when they dispersed, the redhead was unharmed. He got away, he muttered. Pursuing will likely be fruitless, Itachi said with his Sharingan now deactivated. Our prime objective is completed. Yeah, Naruto said with a nod. I guess we should leave. We will rest at the borders of the Fire Country before separating. I still need to make a stop at Kiri. He paused for a moment. It is still morning. I have to be at sea by evening. With Orochimaru. The snake Sannin was not a happy person, Kabuto could tell just by looking at the look on his eyes. The Sannin looked as if he was ready to brutally murder someone. The former root spy could only assume that things hadn't gone as planned and Orochimaru had failed as he had failed with Shizui back then. Perhaps things may have been worse this time. Last time he hadn't looked this badly wounded emotionally. It was possible that he had been embarrassed. If it wasn't the look on his master's face, Kabuto wouldn't have had such a thought. He did believe that the snake was truly powerful and the strongest of the Sannins. He didn't believe that his master would lose in a battle. Since things were in this form, it was safe to say that Naruto and Itachi had proved to be too much. Well, those two were S-ranked shinobi, they were the strongest in their generation, and perhaps the Hokage and one or two could actually fight toe and toe on them. Kabuto had witnessed Itachi's power firsthand. There was no doubting the power of the Uchiha. If he hadn't seen Orochimaru's power, he would have said that Itachi's might was truly frightening. Naruto was a different matter altogether. Aside from the teleportation jutsu, chakra chains and his exceptional control over the fire element and kenjutsu skills, there has been nothing much more said about him. Kabuto had always suspected that there was more to the redhead than what the shinobi world knew. They wouldn't put him in the same league as Itachi if he was not there. "What are you thinking, Kabuto?" Orochimaru asked with narrowed eyes. Kabuto shook his head, clearing his thoughts before he spoke. "Was Naruto able to interfere, Orochimaru-sama?" Orochimaru nodded with a bitter look on his face. "Curse that brat. I underestimated him and Itachi. But you two should have been able to hold him back. Why did you fail, Kabuto? When it became apparent that we wanted to hold him back, he managed to do this," Kabuto said, pointing at the roasted Kimimaro. "Well, what was left of him. The jutsu used should have been able to turn him into ash. But in this state, we can't have any hopes. This will only be good for experiments. Why don't we know everything about Naruto's skills?" Orochimaru demanded, seemingly indifferent towards Kimimaro's situation. "Naruto has not been fighting stronger opponents one-on-one in the past years. He has been mainly deployed to fight against numbers, and when faced with that situation, he uses that jutsu to end the battle within a minute. When faced with normal shinobi, he uses his sword and taijutsu. That means that he isn't forced to fight with everything. Even though his katana is said to be exceptional, we have no seen anything special." "Well, until now," Kabuto explained lightly. "Also, Naruto doesn't engage in all battles. Unless the situation is like this, he won't be the one taking the initiative to attack. He attacks when he's forced to, or when he has other things to handle. During my last encounter with him, defending was all he was doing at first before I made a mistake. And since you can't read him, it's hard to tell if he is holding back or not." Orochimaru became thoughtful for a moment. "Go to Konoha and find out everything you can." Kabuto measured his words before he spoke. "How did things go, really?" Chapter 14. 2 days later. Kirigakure. Mizukage office. The Godai Mizukage couldn't have been pleased when Naruto was seen entering the borders of her village. She had ordered the Anbu to collect Taich and bring him to her office as soon as she received the word. There had been no word of his visit, but Mei was more than happy to welcome the redhead into her village. He must have a reason for coming here. There were pressing matters for Konoha to deal with for him to leave his village and come here to play around. When was the last time she saw him again? If her mind remembered correctly, it was around a year ago when she had gone to visit Konoha on official business. She had requested his presence because she wanted to see the boy who had done something good for her side along with his father. It was expected for Minato to dominate the battlefield, but it was not expected for a 12-year-old. Mei was forever grateful for the efforts the two put, and the sacrifice the Yondaime Hokage made in bringing his 12-year-old son to the battlefield. Their efforts had brought an incredible amount of fear to the forces of her predecessor and forced them to surrender. Of course, Yagura had been greatly displeased and had nearly killed them himself, but she and her man managed to stop the man from doing so. If it had been an all-out war with her men, many would have died and Kiri's forces would have been heavily exhausted. But Minato had known what his presence would do. He had known that if he displayed his power and Naruto did so, the fear would be at play and their enemies would lose their will to fight, and they would surrender without more bloodshed. The beautiful Kage leaned back to her chair as Naruto made himself comfortable on the chair in front of her desk. She smiled delightfully as her eyes danced around his form. He had grown splendidly well, and despite his crimson head, he really did have the face of his father. Mei liked how he styled his hair and how comfortable he was around in all surroundings. She had been disappointed that his father was married. If there was a chance, she would have swept the man off his feet. It wasn't to say that she hadn't tried her luck back then. She had tried something but she had been turned down, and a year ago when she saw this handsome young man, she had been pleased. He had grown well, and was more of a man as his father was. "You will have to forgive me for coming here unexpectedly, Mizukage-sama. If I really had the time, I would have made efforts to warn you prior to my visit," the Uzumaki clan head said in a calm tone. His eyes, though still partially opened, were staring at the woman fully. What a delight the woman was. The eyes could not just get tired of staring at her beauty. Being a shinobi, Naruto traveled around a lot, and he did meet various women, beautiful women. It was really hard to say this one was the most beautiful if he were to being honest. Every woman had something special about her. Physical beauty was there for all to see, but there was something that was usually hidden with these women, and it was always a job Naruto took it upon himself to find out. Perhaps Mai's beauty was even compelling because she was not just a woman, she was a strong woman who led men into a civil war, and was now a cage because she had fought. The weak were fragile. Sometimes one could think they would snap, while they sway their hips around. It wasn't to say that Naruto took his time to study that kind of a display. Beauty was just beauty, and if she was beautiful, and was making a show for him, he wouldn't refuse the opportunity. Well, on a good day obviously. Good day, he meant when his body was feeling the effects of alcohol. May stared for a couple of seconds before responding. Don't mind it. You and your father are always welcome in this village. You were part of the forces that fought for this freedom that we now enjoy, the Mizukage said. Naruto smiled. Well, I'm glad to hear that. He said. Please refer me as May. This isn't a formal meeting or anything, the Mizukage earning a nod from Naruto. Although I can't see your eyes, I know you're staring at me. Naruto tilted his head to the side. Are you offended? May shook her head. But, she said. Answer this question, do you like what you see? Naruto's right opened halfway as he responded. If I didn't I would be staring. But to say it with my words, I like what I see. It is not often that you meet independent women who are not only powerful, but pleasantly beautiful as well. May smiled. I will take the compliment, she said. I doubt you came here for a social call, the Mizukage said in a mildly serious tone. Naruto nodded. I wish to rebuild Uzu. May raised an eyebrow at this. You're heading back to Uzu? Naruto shook his head. Not at all, I phrased that wrongly. I wish to make some constructions in Uzoshogakure. The island is surrounded by sea, and has some wonderful beaches. The land is also vast. My clan is not the richest, and if we are going to increase our numbers, we need money to handle everything. The Uzumaki can't even compete with other clans in Konoha. In terms of riches at least. May took a thoughtful look on her face. Konoha may be strengthening, looking a lot more powerful than it had been back then, but the Uzumaki clan wasn't getting any powerful. She had heard some of the brightest seal masters were killed on their way to a mission. Granted that their numbers were weak, that has left the clan at a disadvantage, and while others strengthened, Naruto was the clan's only powerful asset. May could understand why he was worried. That gave her a thought. I know you are the clan heir. Preparing for your new job? I have been made clan head, Naruto said. As troubling as it is, I must do what is best to ensure that the Uzumaki clan survives. As it stands, we are not heading towards a good path, we are heading towards the fall. This is why I am taking measures to make sure our future is secure. May nodded. What do you want from Kiri? If it is money, you know my position. Although I wish to help, I cannot. I don't want that kind of help from you. I just wish to make a business deal with you. I would have gone to the Wave Country or the Port City in the Fire Nation, but I would like to make business with you. Kiri has marine shinobi who are trained to fight in the sea. I will need that, and I will require maybe 2 or 3 ships. Of course, that will all be paid for, Naruto said. I want to build farms, maybe 3 or 4, and a few hotels. Once the farms start to produce fruits, I will need ships to transport the products, and I also need customers. What are you going to be farming? I will get to that once I get to Konoha, Naruto said with a wave of his right hand. But in terms of ships and the marines, can I count on you? If you are paying, yes, the woman said. That will be good business for my village, and I need all the money I can get to ensure that this village survives. Not everything grows well in this country because of its climate conditions, so if you are offering a good deal, we will have an agreement. Naruto smiled. Well, that is settled then, the redhead said. He stood up and spoke. I will leave you to your work. You are leaving? Naruto shook his head. I'm going to get something to eat, book a room and then later on enjoy the pleasures of this village to calm my mind. I have been having a lot inside my head lately. Drea has some good reviews about the village. I think it will be good. At the thought of the Sannin, Mei frowned, but she shook it off quickly. I'm offended. Don't be Mei, I didn't say I would enjoy the pleasures of this village with anyone else, Naruto said with a sweet smile, both his eyes half opened. Mei smiled looking at those eyes, they were a bright blue color, almost like the sky. You have such beautiful eyes. Why do you hide them? What is beautiful should not be revealed to all eyes. It must be kept hidden and only revealed in the presence of the right people, Naruto responded with a small smile. It was by no means a creepy smile, but a beautiful smile. Mei merely smiled before motioning for the redhead to sit again. I will wait on your offer to see what you can produce, the Mizukage said. But please sit. I have something to inform you. It is good that you came here anyway. I wouldn't have had the time to go to Konoha for the message. Naruto dimmed his eyes as he sat down once again. He looked mildly curious about what the woman wanted to tell him. What is it? I have been approached by both Iwagakure and Kumagakure, Mei said before going into detail. Their messengers have been coming here for a while now. The Raikage even offered a political marriage with his younger brother to prove to me that he will not try what he did with Konoha. I see, that was Naruto's response. His expression didn't change as he spoke. Even so, Naruto understood that this was a serious problem. He could understand why Mei was telling him this. It was a bit of surprise that the Raikage was willing to go that far in order to secure Kirigakure as ally. To offer his beloved brother for marriage? That was a big card that Konoha had yet to think of. Well, he could be wrong. He didn't get involved in those kinds of politics. Both these hidden villages had been making a fuss when Konoha got involved in the politics of Kiri, and took the side of those branded as rebels. Now that Kiri had survived and it was arming itself, having rebuilt in the past years, they now wanted to ally with it. Those hypocrites. Naruto shook his head. He could not really understand what went up in the heads of those people. They were still firm in their standstill with Konoha, and although they had managed to avoid war with Kumagakure, they were not friends, and didn't look like they would be friends at any moment. Is that all? Mei asked. She wanted to know if that was all he could say about her revelation. His response had been slightly indifferent in her opinion. Naruto, eyes fully turned to the Mizukage before he shook his head. I don't know what to say. I don't represent Konoha in any diplomatic talks. I figure I will be involved now since I have gained a seat in the village's council. The redhead was talking to himself more than to Mei. The woman heard him though. Nevertheless, you are a shinobi of Konoha and an important figure in the village. This does affect you, Mei said seriously. You fought with your father to help us win the war. Your village has helped us rebuild. I do not wish to betray the friendship I have with your father and Konoha. Naruto smiled. That makes you a lot more attractive, the redhead said. There are so many people in the corners of this world who will be more than ready to stab you in the back when you are not looking. The thought of betrayal from other villages aside, I'm sure they have offered terms that are appealing to Kiri. Mei nodded. It would make sense to agree with some of the things they have offered in the proposed alliances. But I cannot make a decision knowing that Konoha isn't in good terms with those villages. Nevertheless, there is nothing in the alliance that says I cannot form treaties with those villages. Naruto sighed. He didn't really like having these kinds of discussions. What I can say is that do what is best for your village. But watch out, because if things are not solved at any time soon, there will be a war and you don't want to end up betraying one side to follow the other. We have managed to avoid major incidents with both Iwa and Kiri, but nothing much has changed. What do you think I should do? Give me your personal thought on the matter. I would do what is best for my people, and would not forget the people who helped me in the times of need. Personally, I'm not very fond of Kumo, but I hold no grudges. That is why I will say this to you. You have no problems with both villages, Konoha has a problem with them. Nevertheless, you should be careful with who you invite for dinner. The Raikage has shown he doesn't care about treaties signed on papers in pursuit of power, and Kiri has bloodlines. You are a rare person yourself holding two bloodlines. Mei sighed. It wasn't like her village couldn't survive without those villages, but she didn't want to make enemies out of those leaders. She wanted to be in peace with those she could. She realized that she could not be in peace with all nations, but for now, Kiri was in a critical stage. She could not afford to invite troubles into the shores of this village. These people had seen too much bloodshed already, they needed their rest. Naruto's plan with Uzu could work for her. If he started now, he was able to handle all things in this year and begin planting, then perhaps in December or in January they would be enjoying the fruits. Her village could depend on him for vegetables, which really came hard to Kiri because of their climate conditions. There were other things she would gain. He had a whole island to use for farming. Naruto's plan could solve the food problem. Every other supply she would need from outside the borders of her country, she could get through Konoha. I will formally write to the Hokage and I will hand over the scroll to you before you leave, Mei said to Naruto. I just have to strengthen my ties with Konoha. So even if I do enter into an agreement with either Kumo or Iwal, it will be clear who my friends are. Naruto nodded. Anything else? Mei shook her head. Later then. Naruto smiled. Yes. Wouldn't want to miss it for the world. He paused for a moment. It is still a bit early and I just want to take a nap, and then later on release a bit. Can you tell me of a private training ground? I have one behind my house, Mei said. You can go rest there if you don't mind. I would be more than happy if you chose that offer. Later. Mei's training ground. Ao was surprised when Naruto turned into the training ground. He had been given the job of watching the redhead as the Mizukage's important guest. What had surprised him wasn't the redhead turning towards the training ground after his long sleep. The redhead had slept through the whole afternoon, even after saying that just wanted to take a nap. The surprise had been what his Byakugan had showed him, Naruto controlling the water element with ease. He didn't know the redhead could use the Suton element. The only element the redhead was said to control was Katon. Ao read the latest bingo books even from Konoha, but there was nothing that said Naruto was a Suton user. The Jonin shook his head. He really should not be surprised by this though. Shinobi had their secrets and not everyone wanted everything about them to be published. How are things going? Mei asked as she walked towards Ao, who was standing aside from the training ground, watching Naruto train. Mei-sama, the man acknowledged her presence before he responded. Well, he seems to be testing jutsus. They appear to be new creations. I see, Mei said. You can go home, Ao. I will handle things here. Ao looked at his leader for a moment. He wanted to say something, but the woman didn't wait for him. Her word had been final and she left, walking towards Naruto. Ao didn't suspect Naruto of anything bad. Although he did find the Uzumaki to be a bit creepy at times, he didn't think there would be any harm done if he left the two alone. The redhead was the Yondaime Hokage's son and he wouldn't do anything to destroy that reputation. Besides that, Konoha's current leadership was trustworthy. Without saying anything, Ao left the training ground. The last time I came to Konoha you were also training, Mei said to Naruto. Don't you get enough of it? Naruto looked at the woman before he responded. This atmosphere is a lot more conducive for Suton Jutsu. I find it quite easy to execute jutsu here, the redhead said. Given this ease, I just could not afford to let this chance slip. Suton huh? Mei asked as she looked at Naruto carefully. She had not seen him truly fight a ninjutsu battle. During his time here with his father, he had only used that jutsu and then chakra chains to restrict Yagura after he had released the Bajoa sealed in him when she was fighting him. The redhead had restrained the Bajoa with some powerful chains. Well, he had used one jutsu, but he had done it with his father, and that couldn't be counted. Most people don't know I even know I use Suton jutsu. I have not used it during a fight. The redhead said in a calm tone. I favor my fire element. Why? Not destructive enough for my liking, Naruto said. It can be sharp as wind depending on the level of control, but I already have a sword that is sharp. With Katan, I can burn all kind of things and incinerate a lot more. Sutan doesn't land the knockout punch for me. This is why I prefer Katan. The way he spoke about burning made May feel a bit uncomfortable, but she didn't say anything about it. She thought that perhaps she may have been seeing things and it was too early to judge. How good is your control over Sutan? Good enough, Naruto said with a smile. He tilted his head to the side. You are a Futon user, am I correct? May nodded. What of it? The elements that make the advanced element of Futon is made from the combination of water and fire. My control over both elements is exceptional. While I understand that boil release is a bloodline, it should not be in the realm of impossibilities if my control of the core elements isn't lacking. The redhead paused for a moment. Lava is made up of fire and earth. What makes it possible for me to use some jutsus is because my katan is extremely hot. I can even say it is special. However, I cannot reach your level in this regard, because it isn't natural for me. May seemed to think about it for a few moments. It hasn't been deemed impossible for one to use boil or lava without having the bloodline, but it was extremely rare. Perhaps if control over both elements was perfect, then it was very possible. Can you use a sub-element? Naruto did a few hand seals before slamming his right hand into the ground. It took a couple of seconds, but when May started to see smoke coming out from the ground, she was forced to jump back when the ground she was standing on started to tremble with steam coming out. Crimson flames burst from the ground, and when they died down the ground was filled with a crimson liquid. It was boiling with a few bubbles bursting. May looked at Naruto, who was now standing seemingly unaffected by the heat that was coming out of the ground. It was affecting the Mizukage, and any more of it, she would be sweating and struggling to breath. She did hand seals and released large amounts of water to cover the area. The water splashed all over the training ground, forcing Naruto to jump away for a moment before landing on the water. Despite there being water in abundance, the water around the lava field was steaming. This caused May to frown. But she didn't say anything. She waited until the water disappeared from the ground before speaking. Lava, she said to Naruto. Something like that, Naruto said. The mechanics behind the jutsu is simple. Since my fire element is abnormal, I release it through the ground in its full power. Naturally, the ground will dissolve all that fire plus the earth. They turn lava. I can use this in for a wide area. But using it for a wide area consumes a lot of chakra. However, it benefits me greatly because I can manipulate the lava into jutsu. Without something like that, I cannot use lava. At the same time, it makes Sutan useless. May got her mind to calculate quickly. I see, she said. What about boil release? That is difficult. I can use one jutsu, but it consumes a lot of chakra for me to boast about it, or even use it carelessly, Naruto said. Can I see it? The jutsu I did with my father, do you still remember it? Naruto said. That was just another version of that jutsu. There are actually 4 versions, Naruto said. One is with just wind. That is one used by my father. There is also that version you saw, and there are 2 more versions, which are only known to me. One is with fire and the other is when I add water into fire. He wasn't going to show her. May realized. But she was still curious about the last one. Well, she would eventually see it. You're a lot more knowledgeable about ninjutsu than you're given credit for. Secret, ninjutsu is actually my specialty. I excel the most in it. I avoid using excessive ninjutsu during battles because it is taxing to chakra. For someone like me, you must always be ready when outside of your village, Naruto said, walking towards May. He stopped just inches away from the woman and opened his eyes fully. Will you show me where I can clean myself? I'm rather sweaty. May smiled before twisting delightfully. Portions of her hair hit Naruto as she twisted. Follow me, she said. Konoha. Hokage office. Minato looked at Itachi carefully. He had been expecting the Uchiha to have returned yesterday. The Uchiha was only returning now. Naruto's absence had been explained already, so there was nothing to worry about with his son. I was expecting you earlier, Minato said. Did the mission end up taking much more time than thought? I have already sent a message to the daimyo of hot water that his problem was solved, the Yondaime Hokage said. He never expected Itachi and Naruto to fail even if the two were facing against Orochimaru. They had never failed a mission, no matter what they faced with. Their impressive CVs meant that he could rely on them on missions that could not be failed. It was the same on the mission he had sent them for this time around. Responding to the Yondaime Hokage's question, Itachi spoke, "We successfully stopped Orochimaru and his forces. We didn't engage them though. This seemed to have been a trap to lure me out. He wanted me and was close to branding me with his cursed seal." Minato sighed as he leaned back to his chair. The snake never learned that he could not do that to an Uchiha. Was he trying the same thing he tried with Shizui? Likely, Itachi said. We never got far because I didn't allow him and Naruto came up. With Naruto's presence he fled, the Uchiha said. I imagine he will be looking for revenge. We did him harm. I believe if it was not for his evasive skills, we would have killed him. Minato managed to smile. He is rather good at running with his tail between his legs. For all his power, Orochimaru is rather arrogant and never seems to learn, he said. Well, I doubt he will be underestimating you again. Itachi nodded in agreement. He didn't look himself though, the Uchiha said. He almost looked as if he was weakened. You can hardly call Orochimaru human, Minato said. I will explain the details to you when Jiraiya gives me concrete information. He is still investigating on what has been happening around Orochimaru. Itachi nodded and gave the Hokage the mission report. Minato didn't open the report. He stared at Itachi for a moment before asking. How was Naruto? Normal, Itachi responded. He controls himself better these days. I think it has to do with the expensive pills that Izumi gives him. With them, he stays inside the house sleeping. Yet, I cannot really say he actually feels anything. He is still cold as always. Minato absorbed it silently before nodding. He was really worried for his son. If it wasn't because of his lifestyle, it was possible that the only time one would see his son smiling would only be when he is in the presence of his sister. There was a general lack of empathy and questionable morality. Thank you, Minato said. You're excused. Uchiha compound. Something on your mind, Itachi? Fugaku asked his eldest son, seeing the thoughtful look young man had on his face. It was something to see given that Itachi usually hid his emotions really well. For him to show this expression, it must mean that something is really bothering him. I'm just thinking about the situation that surrounds us, Itachi responded calmly as his father sat down beside him. They were behind their house. Naruto bothers me especially. Fugaku nodded in understanding. His son has always worried about the redhead. There was a lot more about the redhead that was hidden, and Itachi was the only person who could uncover it. However, with growth and maturity, Naruto had taken a different turn in that he was a bit secretive about his desires. He had problems, but he was never forthcoming about them. He too worried about the redhead. Naruto had grown before his very eyes. The Uzumaki had really become like a son to him. Not that he was ever going to admit that to anyone. That was beside the point nevertheless. There has been a lot to deal with and Naruto was shouldering things. Instead of talking, he went up to get drunk. That was one part that Fugaku really didn't approve, and even though he had talked to Naruto about it, the redhead had not listened. Perhaps he would have Mikoto speak to him about it. The two seemed to have an understanding. It was possible that she could speak some sense into him. There was no guarantee that Naruto would actually listen though. His behavior. Naruto can control himself. He is trying, especially now that he has been made clan head. Itachi said with a shake of his head. When he returned from his trip with Jiraiya years ago, he said he could see himself living this kind of life. I never really thought that he would actually live it, The Uchiha shook his head. But that isn't what concerns me the most. Naruto is a bit selfish. That is a part of him that I don't think will change. But he has not been acting in any of that selfishness in the past years. Fugaku finished for Itachi. I have been observing him as well. He has been focused on his duties as a jonin of Konoha and his clan. His dream of being the greatest hasn't been making him live out of the village hunting for stronger opponents. He has in fact been avoiding fighting powerful opponents, and I know it isn't because of fear. Itachi nodded. When we were battling Orochimaru, he wasn't afraid to charge head-on. Against stronger opponents, he never does that. I do wonder why he even keeps most of abilities hidden. Time perhaps, Fugaku gave a thought. With how things are, there is no time to be seeking glory. He has been preparing for his duties as clan head. I think a part of him does realize that there are some things that he must first do. The man paused for a moment before changing the subject. There is word that Iwa and Kumo are plotting to attack us. I heard, Itachi said. He frowned when a thought came to mind. They had been told together with Naruto, and the redhead had only smiled. It was obvious that it was something he was looking forward to. Is there some truth in it? Intelligence says it is, Fugaku said. Of course, we don't have any concrete proof of it, but this is something that we cannot ignore. You have to be careful when you go out of the village. You could find yourself being ambushed. There are reasons to believe that they would rather weaken us at first before engaging us in battle. Itachi nodded. Taking out the big guns would ensure that they have an easy path into their village. War was inevitable, and only Naruto seemed to be the only person who was eagerly waiting for it. I have made preparations for you to succeed me in case something happens, Fugaku said to Itachi. I have told everyone that you will succeed me as clan head. I have given command of military police over to Inabi. In this world, you never know when you will breathe your last breath. This is why it is important to make preparations. Itachi looked at his father curiously. The man had never spoken about dying in any of their talks. He had always been confident about living out his life. Itachi hadn't really thought of a life without his father. The man has always been there. Since birth, he has known his father. He was more familiar with his father than he was with his mother. You speak as if something will happen, Itachi said, now no longer looking at his father. I don't know what will happen, this is why I speak, Fugaku responded calmly. The clan's future looks well, and I cannot have any worries now. The Uzumaki may be shrinking in power, but they are still our friends. Nothing will change. Fugaku looked up for a moment. With the military police force out of my hands, I can focus on Konoha and the clan. Will you be doing missions? Just S-rank missions, Fugaku said. I have been solely working for the clan over the past years. Now it is in a good position. I can turn to Konoha. Regardless of what has happened and might have happened, Konoha is our beloved home, and we must protect it. I wish to be remembered as not only the man who fought for his clan, but also a man who fought for Konoha. Itachi had never doubted that his father loved Konoha and wished to protect it. There was never a doubt in his mind. It was just that as clan head, he tended to put the clan first before the village. But the desire to protect had never been lost. Itachi smiled at his father. It was tiny, but a smile nonetheless. 2 days later. Konoha. It was around 3 p.m. when Naruto returned to the village from his visit to Kirigakure. What a delightful visit that turned out to be. He had even found himself a few bottles of some extremely chilling sake. Naruto wouldn't mind returning to the village once again. The way back home had been silent and quiet. Although it was not usual, Naruto didn't come across any shinobi with evil intentions. There were a number of rogue shinobi from Iwagakure that occasionally wandered across his path in order to defeat him. The redhead had always maintained his superiority over all foes. Defeat for him meant death. He was still hell-bent on never facing embarrassment in a battle. With how frequent Naruto came across the Iwa shinobi, Naruto was beginning to think that perhaps the status of being a missing nin was all just part of the play, and the assaults on him were made just so these people could study him and learn of his weaknesses. Perhaps he was being paranoid, but because of this thought, Naruto never tried to show those people too much because he thought there were eyes that were watching him. The redhead was slowly walking through the streets of the village with his hands inside his pockets, his coat flapping behind him with the tilt of his katana sticking out of his right shoulder. There was no need to be in a hurry, especially when he knew that troubling talks were waiting for him as soon as he went back to the Uzumaki compound. He could see the compound tomorrow, it wasn't like he had a kid there anyway. He could fetch his younger sister after seeing the Hokage before going back to his hideout to get some rest and drink in peace. His mother didn't allow sake in the house, so he had to do it somewhere else. How glad he was that he had his hideout. As he got deep into the village, Naruto disappeared from the streets. It was not safe being in the streets. There were people who were always looking for him. At least they didn't attack him when he was with someone else. The Uzumaki clan head appeared in the Hokage's office and looked relieved when he found his father present in the office. Minato smiled at his son. "You returned far sooner than I expected. I was hoping you'd take your sweet time," the Hokage said. The thought did come to mind, but as much as I hate the responsibility, there are things that must be done, Naruto said calmly, his hands folded across his chest. Minato nodded. There was always something that had to be done. He knew that better than anyone, and it was a problem for Naruto, especially now since he has a clan to take care of. Yoshino was no longer present to pull the strings. It was a pity though. The old woman had been the backbone of the clan, and she really did pull the strings effectively and got things in motion. How did things pan out in Kiri? Minato asked. They went well, the redhead said. He considered his thoughts for a few moments before speaking once again. Did Izumi tell you of what I had in mind? Minato nodded. Do you think it will work though? You don't have the resources to protect things, and Iwa and Kumo will think that you're trying to rebuild Uzu, and they will no doubt try to stop that from happening. If it does come to that, I will not hesitate to strike, and I will not be in a diplomatic mood to solve things, Naruto responded in a quiet tone with some steel in it. This is something that must be done for the sake of the Uzumaki clan. Those people will not get in the way of it. I will not permit it. My fellow clansmen men were slaughtered by the Akatsuki, and we know that Onoki hired them. I have been quiet, but I have not forgotten. The time will come. If they try to get in this, I will not show mercy. The Uzumaki could not afford to be toyed with in this time, not when he was the clan head. He would not accept anyone trying to lord themselves over his clan. If people wanted to destroy what he wanted to build, they would see the demon in Uzumaki Naruto. Minato swallowed hard. His son could be menacing when he wanted to be. He didn't look serious at all. He was very calm and his tone was normal. But Minato knew that Naruto was very serious about this matter. He knew that his son had been infuriated when Drea supplied the evidence that it was Iwagakure who had hired the Akatsuki. He had been disturbed when Naruto calmed down moments later and hadn't spoken of revenge. But with what he had just said, Minato was certain that a day would come where there would be hell to pay. He was certain of it. Although his son says he doesn't hold grudges, he could be very vengeful at times. It hadn't been in Minato's shoes to take decision with regards to what to do about the matter, but Kushina's, the woman had said she would leave the decision to Naruto. Just make sure that you don't worsen things. Naruto shrugged indifferently. There will be payments, he said. When he does reveal himself to the world, his enemies would be asking for forgiveness. Of course, Naruto wasn't even sure that he would be merciful to the merciless. He wasn't that kind to be forgiving actions that he deemed to be unforgivable. Iwagakure had just a bit too far with their attack. He took out the scroll he was given by Mei and handed it to his father. Message from Kiri. The Mizukage says Iwa and Kumo have approached her, and she also wishes to strengthen the ties between Konoha and Kiri, but at the same time, she does wish to better the diplomatic relationship with other hidden villages. Minato didn't look surprised. I see, he said. There is a meeting tomorrow at 8 a.m., council chambers, be there. Naruto frowned. That early? Minato nodded. You have a mission after the meeting? You were requested by name. Who is it this time? Naruto said with a sigh. You will know tomorrow, Minato said. Naruto stared for a moment, before shaking his head. This was really a bother. Missions after missions. There was never an end to them. It was okay when he didn't have a clan to look after. You'll have to limit some of the missions you give me. Trivial things can be handled by other shinobis. The redhead stated in a firm tone. Is Karin home? She should be, Minato said. A few minutes later, Naruto was walking towards Ikaraku Ramen with his younger sister closely on his right side. He had decided it was best to take the girl out before retiring to his hideout. Once he had given the girl his time, he wouldn't be seeing anyone else. His schedule would be free from everyone and it would just be him, his sorrows and sake. So are things progressing in the academy? Good, Karin said. No thanks to you, Oni-sama. You promised to teach me kunai throwing, and you didn't. I have to see an infuriating smug look from that baby Sasuke reminding me that his beloved brother teaches him things when my brother doesn't, the blonde said with her hands folded across her chest. She was pouting even. Sorry sister, Naruto said apologetically. I'm always busy these days. You always say that, Karin said. Itachi is always busy too, but he makes time to teach Sasuke. Naruto sighed. Fine, he said. When I do this last mission, I will request a month off to handle some clan matters. I would like to teach you tomorrow, but I have a mission tomorrow morning. Well, we can do it after. Another mission. Karin stopped walking as she stared. Odu-sama keeps sending you out of the village. Naruto nodded. I think he hates your Oni-sama, the redhead said in a look on his face. He changed when a thought came to mind. You still do have academy tomorrow. So? Naruto turned to look at his sister who had spoken as if the academy was nothing. I don't want your mother to kill me for making you ditch the academy. You know how she gets about dodging classes. Karin frowned. If you don't want to train me, I will see what I can do on my own, she said. We will make an excuse tomorrow, Naruto said. Young ones using emotional blackmail to get what they wanted. It wasn't like he had any problems with his sister missing a day in the academy. She belonged to a clan and Izumi took good care of her education. There was no need to worry about anything. He didn't even have a high opinion of the damn academy. He could simply say she had matters of diplomatic that concerned the clan, and be done with it. Who would question him? He was the clan head. He could say stuff like that. If that man was still at the academy, a lie would be difficult to sell though. What was left? Their mother. It would be a problem dealing with her. He would have to come up with something to calm her down. Karin beamed. See? That wasn't so hard. Our Taijutsu sensei said even though you were always in class, you were never present in mind. The girl paused for a moment. He says who were the worst student he had, and Itachi was his best. But Urka-sensei is nice. Naruto smiled remembering the good days. You don't want to be like your brother, dear. But you don't really like it when someone speaks badly of me, do you? It wasn't actually correct to say badly. Most of it was correct, even though people tended to exaggerate. Of course not, Karin said firmly. You're the best, better than the whole Uchiha clan and Itachi. That baby Sasuke can boast about his brother being the best. I know you're the best, Oni-sama. Naruto smiled as he picked up his younger sister. He placed her on his shoulders before speaking. This is why I love you, he said softly. But you should not argue with those people. I will prove to them one day that I am the best. And you can wear a wide grin going around telling everyone, I told you so. How does that sound? Karin grinned. Can't wait for you to show everyone. I wonder if that baby will still be wearing that smug look on his face. Naruto shook his head. The relationship between Karin and Sasuke was truly a strange one. The two were competitive, but not on their skills, but about their brothers. Karin couldn't compete with Sasuke on the shinobi level. Fugaku had birthed another genius. What even pushed Sasuke hard was that he wanted to reach his brother's level. Naruto, a very familiar warm voice called from the side. Naruto turned to look at the ruby eyes that were looking at him with a warm smile. The redhead forcefully pulled his sister from his shoulders. The girl didn't want to leave, but even when he did, she still stayed attached to his right foot with her hand holding his. She was standing in between him and Kurena. "Hello Kurena," the redhead said with a warm smile of his own. "You look delightful as always. Being Jonin treating you well?" Kurena nodded. "It has its challenges, but I am coping," she said. "How have you been?" "Good. Just returned to the village. I haven't seen you in a while. We must catch up so you can tell me what I have missed," Naruto said, still smiling warmly. "Are you free later on?" Karin intervened. "Oni-sama," she said, looking up at her brother. "I hear you, dear," Naruto said without looking at his sister. "So? I'm not. I promised Asuma I would be with him, but I was actually looking for you. I need your help with something," Kurena said. Naruto stared at the woman for a few moments. Asuma was the Sandaime son, and her new boyfriend. Well, it seemed that the ship had really sailed. It was a bit sad. Oh well, nothing really could be done about. "I have a mission tomorrow." He looked up. "The sun has yet to set. Allow me to finish up here, and I will meet you at the usual place." "How does that sound?" Karin intervened once again. "Oni-sama, you promised that you would never allow your ex to disturb our time together." Kurena stared at Naruto. "Ex? Ah, never mind. What are you telling her?" Naruto merely smiled. "Don't mind her. I will see you in 30 minutes, the redhead said, picking up his sister once again. Kurena nodded and walked away. "Are you still friends with her?" "Azumi said you had fought with her and she had become your ex," Karin asked. Naruto shook his head. "Do you even know what that means? What has Azumi been telling you about me?" "It's not her fault," Karin was quick to know. "I asked because I wanted to know. I hear things you know." "Don't let it bother you," Naruto said calmly. "How do I make up to you? Will telling you Sasuke's nickname make up for the fact that I have to cut our time short?" Training ground 8 minutes later. Kurena was calmly waiting for Naruto under a tree. This was the same training ground they had first met some years ago. Kurena remembered the memory fondly. She had trained with the team in a few occasions as she was helping Mikado with his students in Genjutsu. Though strong, he had been new to the job, and wanted someone to help him with his students. Kurena had still been a chunin and yet the man didn't mind. He just wanted someone with experience. Although the time with the team had been short, it had been fun, and she had learned a lot. Naruto had been simply amazing back then for a genin, that is. Even when he single-handedly dominated Kumo's Chunin exams with some fine work that no one even noticed until it was a little too late. What was even impressive was that Naruto had only used one jutsu throughout the whole exams. It was used repeatedly though. The rest of his fighting style incorporated the use of his defensive techniques and swordplay. When Naruto appeared in the training ground via his unique Shunshin, Kurena smiled sadly. He had really changed. It happened before the Chunin exams, when that fateful incident occurred. Others may not have noticed it. They might have believed that he changed after the mission in Kirigakure, but Kurena knew that the incident dealt a major blow to him. She had been the one to grow closer to him after it. His father had even begged her to look after him when it became known to him that she was spending time with him in this training ground. But things do change quickly. He had grown from being a kid to a man, and now this was the reality. "That look doesn't fit you," Naruto said, looking at the sad smile on Kurena's lips. "Something bothering you?" Kurena shook her head. "I was just reminiscing about some old times," the woman said in a quiet tone. She smiled. "What do you want to know?" "You said you wanted to catch up." Naruto sat down beside the woman. "What have I missed?" "Nothing much really," Kurena said with a shake of her head. "It has been quiet over the past months. Not for you though. You have been busy, and the only time one gets you in the streets is when you're with your sister. For the redhead, it was always mission after mission. Sometimes he didn't have to do difficult missions, but yet he would leave the village for a month on the mission. The problem was that since Naruto was known, some important people often called him in name. For good business, the redhead was forced to attend to the missions whenever he was not busy with difficult missions. In most cases, Itachi was forced to handle Naruto's missions while the redhead did the easy missions. The streets are not very fond of me, Naruto said with a smile. I don't understand the problem though. I mean, I don't chase after their children, it is just that when they come after me, I don't refuse them. Then throw them away after you're done with them, Kurena added in somewhat of a bitter tone. Any parent wouldn't want that. It is especially worse for you given your image, Kurena shook her head before speaking once again. I haven't been hearing anything lately though. Haven't had the time to drown my sorrows in sake, Naruto said. It's always something after something, and you know things happen when I have had a little too much to drink. Kurena wasn't going to tell him to stop drinking. It was his way of coping. Still, when he wasn't drunk, he was a delightful person who controlled himself better, but when the alcohol kicked in, he was a different person. How long are you staying this time around? Just this night, Naruto said. I have a mission tomorrow morning. I don't know the contents, though I don't know how long it will last. Why? Kurena shook her head, just curious, she said. I wanted you to help me with my taijutsu. Since I have been doing A-ranked missions, I have been finding them challenging. When you only specialize in genjutsu, it is truly difficult to cope against shinobi who handle genjutsu better. For me, solo missions are my worst enemy. Naruto frowned. I thought you needed help with something personal, he said. Kurena shook her head. I have moved on, Naruto, she said sadly. Are you going to help me out? Of course I will. Anything for you, dear, Naruto said, standing up. He held out his right hand for Kurena to take it. When she did, he pulled her closer to him, standing just inches away from him. He breathed in her scent before smiling. You still smell good, he said before distancing himself. You know my motto, attack me, and we will see from there. Later. Naruto's hideout. Naruto wasn't surprised when he found Mikoto humming in front of his stove while cooking. You should just divorce Fugaku and become my wife, the redhead said with a smile as he walked over to the kitchen. Mikoto turned around to face Naruto for a moment. She smiled and returned to her cooking before she responded. Maybe I will, she said. But you will have to prepare yourself for the assaults that will come. I don't come cheaply, and I carry some certain threats because I am a special somebody. For you, I wouldn't mind, Naruto said as he looked at what she was cooking. It smelled delicious as always. Besides, when it comes to defense, I am the master. We would have problems explaining things to little Sasuke though. Itachi would probably just raise an eyebrow and say, I see. Mikoto laughed at that. Possibly, she said. He doesn't find it easy to express his emotions, still, when he does, he looks so sweet. So I hear from some fangirls, Naruto said, opening a cupboard. He took out a bottle of sake and opened it. Screw a saucer, he drank from the bottle. I hate it when a girl walks up to me and asks me about Itachi's relationship status. The redhead said, leaning against the kitchen unit, just beside Mikoto. The Uchiha swept the bottle from Naruto's hands and placed it on the other side away from Naruto. The redhead pouted. Not fair, he said. Mikoto ignored that expression. Fugaku has given me the time to do this and speak to you, she said. Go take a shower. When you return, food will be ready. Naruto stared at the woman for a few moments before sighing. Fine, the redhead said and walked away. The 30 minutes Naruto took to bath were all Mikoto needed to finish up everything, and she placed the food in the small table in the kitchen and waited for Naruto to come. She smiled when the redhead returned to the kitchen looking a bit refreshed, his hair falling over his face as nothing was holding it back. Naruto settled down across the Uchiha and looked at her for a moment before speaking. What is so important that Fugaku allowed you to come here and talk to me? Mikoto didn't respond to the question. Where have you been? I know you returned a bit earlier, she said. It was late now, at around 8 p.m. I was helping Kirena with something. After which we talked about a few things, and I took back to her place. Thereafter, I went home to the library to look at something. The redhead explained lightly. Mikoto nodded. He is worried about you. Everyone is worried. You don't talk, she said in a serious tone. There is really nothing to worry about, Naruto said calmly. I have things under control. I have always had things under control. He paused as he served himself. Thank you for the food, he said before digging into the food. Mikoto stared at Naruto for a long minute. If I had my eyes opened, I'd be uncomfortable right now, the redhead said. But that doesn't mean that I don't feel your stare. Talk to me, or at least promise me that you will talk to me when you're ready. Naruto opened his eyes halfway. He wasn't smiling, but just nodded to the latter. The following morning. Council chambers? I'm surprised you managed to make it, Hayashi said as he walked beside Naruto, heading towards their seats in the chambers. What do you think of me? Hayashi just stared at Naruto for a moment before saying something else. How far are you on our agreement? He asked. It was a good time as any. He hadn't seen the redhead since that day they talked, and he was sure he wasn't going to see him once this meeting is over. If he wasn't going to be drinking, he was going to be a mission outside the village. Hayashi really didn't want to speak to anyone else about the matter other than Naruto. Not anywhere, Naruto said with a shake of his head. I haven't had the time. It is a delicate matter that requires focus and full attention. Azumi is looking at it though. Once I have time, I will work on it with her. Hayashi nodded. He didn't have a problem with Azumi working on the caged bird seal. The woman was rumored to be a better user of Fuinjutsu than Naruto. He could allow her to work on it. Besides, although he was good, Naruto wasn't the one who boasted about his skills in the art of sealing. I hope it soon, Hayashi said as he settled down. Naruto didn't respond, he just walked over to his seat and sat down. It took 2 more minutes for the room to fill up with all clan heads present along with the Yondaime Hokage. I'm happy that everyone is present, Minato said with a smile. I won't take much of your time so I will get into it. By now you must have heard that Iwa and Kumo are planning something big. I don't know how big it is or whether it is true or not, but we have to take measures in case something is being planned. Was Drea the source of this information? Sum asked, looking straight at the Yondaime Hokage. When Minato nodded, she spoke again. Then I believe we should take it seriously. We cannot afford to be caught by surprise. Minato nodded in agreement. They had been aware that things would come to this point, but even though they did not wish to go to war and had been stalling as well as overlooking certain things for the sake of avoiding war, they knew it was inevitable. They had to prepare themselves for what was about to come in order to survive the war and still remain on top. He looked at Naruto. At least some of them had overlooked some things. It wasn't to say that they had forgotten Kumo's sins. Both villages had yet to apologize for their actions anyway, knowing that Konoha wouldn't declare war. Although Naruto said he didn't hold grudges and didn't seem to hate Kumo despite everything, what happened to his people 2 months ago appeared to be something he was not willing to let go. Minato looked at Shikaku as the man spoke. What has Danzo said about this? Shikaku asked. Although the man could come up with twisted things, he did have a few points every now and then. The man understood war better after all. Nothing as of yet, Minato said. I have assigned him to dig deep, and also given him the job of hunting down any spy in our village. Perhaps we will be able to gather information. He paused for a moment. In any case, the law we put in place about not allowing 3 genins and a jonin to leave the country's borders is still in place. When you go out to hold diplomatic talks for your clans outside the village, please inform me so that we can make necessary arrangements. To further secure our borders, we have requested permission from the Fire Lord on increasing our presence within this country, the Sandaime Hokage took over from Minato. Our Anbu are not enough. This is why we have made the decision to have Danzo's Ni forces work outside the village for cover missions. They will work at night to secure this country. We will also create a special division of the military police force that will be working outside this village. This division will be made up by members of the Uchiha, Hyuga, Inuzuka, and Nara. The rest will remain on standby. That isn't to say that all members of these clans will be stationed outside the village. Uchiha will still maintain military police force. A few members will just be outside the village. Who will head such a division? Fugaku, Minato said. He is the only one capable of doing so. I doubt anyone can doubt his power, Minato said, looking around the table. There is also something else. He looked at the Uchiha clan leader. Some members of my clan have reported that they are being targeted, the Uchiha said. This has been going on for a while. It is safe to say that they are after the Sharingan. The power our Dojutsu has proved to be the most powerful, and our enemies will do anything to get their hands on it. Hyuga branch members are protected by this because of the caged bird seal, but members of the main family are not protected. Hayashi couldn't help but send a glare to Fugaku, but the man shrugged it off. Chusa nodded in agreement. It doesn't make sense to me. Members of the main family are not protected. If they are captured, the secrets to the Byakugan will be discovered. You can't actually believe that the branch family will actually protect the main family forever. I hear there is some resentment, and if anything, they are more likely to leave them to be captured than actually save them. Hayashi hated the eyes that were staring at him. Even so, he kept his Hyuga mask as he spoke. I would advise you keep matters of my clan as such, Hayashi said to Chusa. You say that we are not protected, what about you? He asked, glaring at Fugaku. You need to be reminded that the man who came here with the Mizukage was wielding the Byakugan. A spoil of war, if you like, and it came from the main family. Your family, Fugaku said sternly. We are working on a way to protect our Dojutsu. What? Shikaku said before turning to Naruto, getting the idea that the answer may come from the redhead. The Nara almost laughed, seeing the expressionless look on Naruto's face with traces of boredom. Naruto didn't say anything until all eyes were on him. Even when he spoke, he looked like someone who didn't to be in the chambers. My clan is working on a special seal. The principle is simple. Every seal will be unique as our DNA is unique. That means that if the Dojutsu is stolen, whether the person is alive or dead, it will not work on anyone else except for the DNA that awakened it. Because the seal will be connected to the nerves, once the eyes are gouged out, they will be sealed off, unusable. For a Sharingan, they will be normal eyes, and if anyone notices that there is a seal on them and tries to undo it, they will go boom. Another method would be to set a self-destruct seal that will make the eyes explode if the heart stops beating, or it can be made to explode by the person if he thinks he is going to be captured. Personally, I would choose the former. He paused for a moment. Oh, the seal will be extremely painful for anyone? I mean, but that kind of pain that makes you feel like every inch of your body is being torn apart. I mean, even someone like Hayashi can make that ear-shattering scream. The redhead looked at Hayashi. That'd be amusing to see. Although no one was going to say it, there was a general nod to the idea. So, for the Uchiha, that means that non-Uchihas will never be able to use the Dojutsu again. Well, unless you're Uzumaki or you abduct the Uchiha before she awakens the Sharingan. A complex seal like that would require for the Sharingan to be awakened before it is applied, Shikaku said, looking between Fugaku and Naruto. Cases like with Kakashi will not happen again. And of course the Uzumaki know the secrets so they can deactivate, the Ibarame Shibi said calmly. Not to mention they will know the secrets, Asum said. Naruto smiled. That is true, he said calmly. If you want to know the secrets yourself, you can create the seals yourselves. In any case, since we are simply exploring options, we can still create a seal that seals them while still in the original body. The seal will still have to be connected to the chakra system. If chakra is sealed or suppressed, the seal will activate, or it can be activated manually. We will create a key to unlock sealed eyes, and each clan head will have one. The Uchiha have already agreed, Minato said to Heishi. You have to make that choice for the good of your clan and the village. The Yondaime said. Kumo and Uegakure have made moves on Kirigakure. Kumagakure has even offered a political marriage to her. Then we have to move fast, Sum said. What does she say about this? The Mizukage wants to strengthen the relationship between Kiri and Konoha, while at the same time she would like to have acceptable diplomatic relationships with the villages. If Kumo is offering a marriage, we should offer one too, Heishi said. That will strengthen the ties considerably, and will make sure that Konoha has influence in Kiri affairs if an heir is produced. The Sandaime Hokage chuckled lightly. When the eyes looked at him, he shook his head. My former teammates would have said that we should do so in order to acquire her rare bloodlines. Then we would form another clan in the village. Minato seemed to nod in agreement. They would say something like that, he said with a smile. Oddly, I miss how annoying they could be. Heishi cleared his throat so that they could return to the main subject. You are still young, why don't we arrange a marriage between you and her? This time it was Naruto who was amused. If he has a death wish. The redhead said. Kushina would kill me, the Yondaime Hokage said nervously. Before anyone could suggest his son, Fugaku spoke. Itachi is out of the question. The Sharingan will not be leaving Konoha. The man spoke in a firm tone that threw any more thoughts about his son out of the window. No one seemed to disagree with that. How about your son then? Chusa asked Minato. Heishi nodded. He is a clan head, and an important figure in this village. Kiri does consider him to be a hero. No one would complain, the man said, his lips twitched slightly. It wouldn't be bad for the Uzumaki anyway, and given your behavior, I'm surprised why you didn't jump for the idea. The man was addressing Naruto straight in the end. Marriage is too big for me, Naruto said with a shake of his head. The Mizukage is a delightful woman, but I'm too young to be married. Sum snorted, yet old enough to be whoring around with other people's daughters. Naruto looked at the woman with his head tilted to the side. He knew she had a son, but a daughter he was not too sure. He wasn't going to ask though. Instead he wisely chose not to respond. Everything else aside, the Sandaime started. This will be a good thing for Konoha, and it will show other villages that Konoha's ties with Kirigakure are strong. And Naruto, despite being clan head, you are still a jonin of this village. If you are the chosen candidate, you can still be forced. Besides, no one said the marriage has to be real. That is rather brutal of you, Naruto said. But the truth nonetheless, the old man said, smiling, an apologetic smile. I still refuse, Naruto said unapologetically. True, I am a shinobi of this village, but you cannot force me into marriage. I am a clan head. There are certain privileges that come with that. The Sandaime Hokage frowned. Are you sure about that? He asked. Naruto gave the old man a look that questioned if he was joking or not. Chapter 15. The meeting with clan heads over, Minato had gone back to the office along with Naruto so that he could give the redhead the mission that he had told him about. The Yondaime settled behind his desk and took comfort on his chair with Naruto just standing there like a statue. The man didn't focus too much on his son. He closed his eyes and pictured happy memories before he spoke. You could show a bit of interest in the meeting, Minato suggested calmly. There was no doubt in his mind that Naruto would rather be a passenger than participate in the talks they were going to have during the meetings. This time around he had talked more, because it had been a necessity. What about next time when no one would be asking him anything of him? It was just going to be silence until the meeting was over. Naruto shrugged. I will show interest on things that interest me, the Uzumaki clan head said calmly. There is no need to play any game that isn't fun for you. Besides, the experienced head can handle things. When it comes to my clan, I will stand firm. Minato shook his head. What did you do to Hana? Naruto tilted his head to the side. He was not sure he knew any Hana. His mind could not think of anyone coming to mind, and so he asked. Can you give me more details? You went on a mission with her, Inuzuka with a dog, Minato said. She is Tsume's daughter. What did you do to her? Naruto appeared to think for a moment, before he finally responded. She is Kirena's friend, he started as he thought on some things that occurred months back. I didn't force her to do anything, and if you're going to blame anyone, you have to blame Anko. What did Anko do? Minato asked just for the sake of it. She brought the girl to me while I was drinking, and it was after our mission, and then left us alone. Naruto said, with a shake of his head. Well, that explains why Tsume was looking at me murderously. I don't understand though, her daughter is not a little girl. She can make her own decisions. Not when drunk, Naruto, Minato more or less shouted. Fugaku knocked in and walked into the office as spoke the next words. You have to apologize to Tsume for your actions. If you do not, you will make things difficult for yourself. Hayashi doesn't really like you either, and he only conducts business with you because he doesn't have a choice. Fugaku seemed to nod in agreement. An apology will suffice, the Uchiha said. You're in a delicate position and you must act delicately. Everything about you will be scrutinized now, and since you're in the political field, you will find out those actions can lead to some massive consequences will not work on your favor. We really cannot have members of the council looking at you with contempt, Minato added in a firm tone. You don't have to like it. But just do what needs to be done to maintain the peace. Naruto appeared to think about it for a moment before nodding. Fine, I will send my apologies, he said. What is my mission? Minato took out a scroll and handed it to the redhead. The client of your last mission with Team Mahiro has requested your services. He owns a mine in the land of rivers. The mine has been under attack by some mercenaries who have now taken over. Your mission is to take back control over of the mine, and then come back. The Yondaime paused for a moment. Should I send a word to the client informing him that the mission will be completed by tomorrow night? There was no need to ask. Naruto never failed a mission. He didn't have such a stain on his record. Whatever mission he was tasked with doing, he did without fail. He was one of a few who had a 100% success rate in missions, and yet he had just one D-rank mission under his belt. Most of his missions were S and A rank, solo missions even. The redhead preferred to work alone, and he usually had to work with someone else when the situation required it, or when the person he would be doing the mission with had an ability that he didn't have, and that ability would help with the success of the mission. Yes, Naruto said. Excellent, Minato said with clap of his hands. Directions are in the scroll I gave you. Naruto nodded. You can expect me tomorrow evening, he said before disappearing in a burst of flames. Fugaku stared down at the Yondaime Hokage for a few moments before speaking. You should try to control your son a bit more, the Uchiha head said. I know I might be asking too much of you, but you should try it. Naruto does what he wants, and when he sees fit. That is a problem for someone in his position. Minato looked at the man telling to control his son with an expressionless look on his face. Who was Fugaku to tell him to control his son? Hell, the man could not control Itachi. Sure, the Uchiha did nothing that shamed the Uchiha clan, but Fugaku couldn't say that he controlled the actions of his son. Itachi did what he felt was right, and it didn't matter what his father thought of it. Of course, the teenager respected the thoughts of his father and would not willingly disobey his father's orders unless the situation called for it. Either way, Fugaku did not have control over Itachi. Aren't you saying that because you have failed in trying to control him? Minato asked calmly. It wasn't that the Yondaime Hokage was blind. While Naruto kept a good relationship with the Uchiha, it wasn't like how things used to be in the past. The son of his didn't spend as much time as he used to in the Uchiha compound, and he seemed closest to Mikoto than he was to Fugaku. There was also the fact that Fugaku didn't really like Naruto's behavior at times. What was a problem was that Naruto didn't really care what Fugaku thought of what he did when he was drinking. He lived his life the way he wanted, and if it made him happy, no one had the right to say anything. Maybe Fugaku was not willing to admit that he could not control the redhead. But your son needs to be more disciplined. He does have his moments, he is a bit too careless, and that reflects badly on his image. I cannot control Naruto nor do I wish to do so. Naruto isn't a child. I think he has grown enough to be allowed to live the way he wishes. But of course that doesn't mean that we can't tell him when things aren't in order, Minato stated firmly. I'm guessing you're here about your departure from the village. Fugaku nodded. We have to complete the final documentation and other preparations quickly so that I can get to work. My clan has grown that it can stand without me being around 24/7. Besides, I have been fighting for the clan for far too long, and it is about time I also put my efforts to fight for the village. Minato nodded, he understood perfectly. There had never been a shred of doubt in his mind over Fugaku's love for Konoha. The Uchihas did love Konoha, but were just often misunderstood by people. The Sandaime had even said that the man had inherited the will fire. That made him a good person in the Sandaime's book. Thinking about the will of fire really made him frown. Naruto didn't have such. His son was another entity that was just difficult to understand at times. There was an agreement that his son really did have little emotions and that the good actions were not driven by a good heart, but simply by principles and perhaps the thought to make better himself in the eyes of his cold heart. Well, it wasn't to say that his son didn't really have emotions. He had them, just not attached to a lot of people. Drea had even suggested that he might psychotic. Of course, you would never see that just by looking at him. There were three things that Naruto displayed: a happy smile, a twisted smile, and a blank smile. It was always one of the three and other emotions were always hidden away. The Yondaime Hokage shook his head, realizing that he had drifted off from his conversation with Fugaku. I will finish up things by end day. I have already put aside the funding for this project and the daimyo has assured me he will make contributions as this make the fire country very safe. You've really worked around the feudal lord, huh? Fugaku said. Well, you just have to know how to handle things and the Sandaime was really a big help when it came to him, Minato said with a smile. What does your wife say about this? You will be away most of the time. Fugaku tilted his head to the side for a moment. He straightened himself as he realized he was taking in Naruto's habits. Things are not that great at the moment and Mikoto isn't like your wife. You mean she doesn't object to your decisions, and you simply tell her what you are going to do and she does nothing but just follow? Fugaku stared for a moment before he responded. That is what I expect of her. But perhaps this has been the source of late frictions. Either way, it doesn't really matter, the man said. I am doing what must be done. Do what you must, but Fugaku, remember that family is very important. Your family is one thing that will never throw you away. Even if Naruto loses it, I will always stand by his side because he is my son. Earlier with Danzo, the Warhawk narrowed his eyes when Orochimaru's lapdog appeared before him. He really didn't like this kind of a surprise that had just appeared before him. He didn't like Kabuto one bit. He was a dangerous tool that he had failed to get rid of. Naturally, that left a bitter taste in his mouth. Really, he would have preferred it if the former knee spy had remained dead. But he could thank that conniving snake that the man was alive and could have the audacity to walk into this village and appear before him like this. What was stopping him from ordering his knee to kill the tool right now? Kabuto knew a little too much than he should, and that was all thanks to Orochimaru. Really, there were so many secrets that were inside that head, but so many could ruin him. Well, the boy was useful for now. His time would come and Danzo would not waste time to get rid of the loose end. What do you want? Danzo demanded. Kabuto was amused by the hostile treatment. No need to be hostile, Danzo-sama, the nin spoke calmly. I am your former servant after all. I merely work for a better team this time around, but we still do conduct business together. Danzo narrowed his eyes. If you don't get it, Orochimaru will lose his right hand, the war stated calmly. Kabuto merely smiled. I want information about Naruto. Unfortunately, information about his abilities has been a little scarce, and Orochimaru-sama is bothered by it. Future plans demand that he know what must be known. I'm sure you can supply something valuable. He could. He did know a few things about Naruto, none that really made him a happy person. Really, he was often struggling to make who was the bigger threat between Naruto and Itachi. The Uzumaki may not be like it, but he was seriously a big problem that Danzo loathed. At least he had something of an understanding with Itachi about certain things. Well, he could not say that his relationship with the Uchiha was really good. The bloody Uchiha had threatened to kill him after all. It all had something to do with the whole Shizui business. He was just fortunate that Itachi had not told Fugaku about it. If he had, he wouldn't be sitting here. That man would have summoned the entire Uchiha clan into his hideout. It would have been bloody. What are these future plans you speak of? Danzo asked with narrowed eyes. Kabuto waved his right hand in a dismissive manner. You will know soon enough, he said. Then, are you going to give me what I want? Why should I give that information to Orochimaru? Danzo was looking for a trade. Nothing was ever for free in this world, and he hadn't become so soft that he would be willing to give away information for free, especially if it was for Orochimaru. Kabuto put on a thoughtful look on his face. Well, Orochimaru-sama gave you your secret weapon, and we know about Shizui. I imagine if that kind of information got leaked, there would be massive consequences. Danzo narrowed his eyes as he snapped his fingers. Two of his agents flashed beside Kabuto, flanking both his sides. I don't like being threatened, the War Hawk stated calmly. If threats are what you came here for, you will not return to Orochimaru alive. Kabuto merely chuckled, not the least afraid. He had worked around Orochimaru for far too long to be frightened by something like this. It wasn't to say that Danzo was harmless. No, it would be stupid of him to think that the War Hawk was not dangerous. Danzo was the very definition of danger. His master was just a lot better at it than the War Hawk. Is there something specifically that you want to know? Kabuto asked before pushing his glances a bit. I want to know about Kumo's activities with Iwagakure. Sunigakure hasn't been the greatest of allies in recent years, and their attitude towards this trouble bothers me greatly, Danzo stated. He would be more than willing to teach them a lesson for their actions. Well, it wasn't like Konoha needed that weak village in order to survive. The hidden leaf was the strongest, and Danzo would ensure that things stayed that way. Any village that tries to take that away would be dealt with. It didn't matter which village, he would do anything in his power to make any village pay. He was moving things slowly this time around though. There were a little too many enemies to make a move. That is something I cannot say now, Kabuto said with a smile. How about the Akatsuki? I know that their leader is related to Drea. Kabuto's grin widened slightly. When it comes to politics, you cannot touch the Yondaime Hokage. He has too much support. But what if something happens to Konoha? You would be able to use that to discredit him. What do you know? Kabuto waved his right hand carelessly. Nothing I shouldn't, he said. In any case, Orochimaru-sama knows of your desires, and he would be willing to help you out when the time does come. Well, that isn't much of a trade. Yes, I said something about the Akatsuki. The leader of the organization is a wielder of the Rinnegan and actually toppled your former accomplice Hanzo in taking control over Imigakure. Danzo was silent for a few moments. So it is true, Hanzo is dead, the War Hawk said. You said something about Drea. According to Orochimaru-sama, the Rinnegan wielder might be an orphan of war Drea took in during the Second Shinobi World War. This information could be very useful when you want to discredit Minato, Kabuto said. Danzo was quiet for a few moments before nodding to one of his agents who disappeared. Naruto is an important tool for Konoha, and I cannot have Orochimaru try take that away. He can become the perfect weapon when he wants to be. I cannot give away everything. However, I can tell you this, he is going out on a mission near Takumi. He is still in the village, and should be living anytime soon. You can tell him. The War Hawk paused as his agent returned with a file. That file contains some information about Naruto. Kabuto took the file and bowed slightly. Well, Danzo-sama, he said a bit mockingly, It was pleasant seeing you again. The former knee spy slipped away after saying those words. Later that day, Naruto was traveling through the forest of the Fire Country, hopping through the trees before he came to a halt when he sensed a nuisance following him from behind. He really didn't like people who liked coming at him in this way. It was much better when an opponent was not too afraid to show himself before him. When he was going after an opponent, he didn't just stall by watching them move from behind. He showed himself to them and would attack when the opportunity presented itself. The person behind him showed himself when Naruto landed on the ground. The redhead frowned slightly when he came face to face with Kabuto. This kind of crafty person wasn't his most favored. You always had to be on guard against such a person. Kabuto, the Uzumaki clan head, started, his partially opened eyes staring at the smiling shinobi a couple of feet away from him. What can I do for you? If you're here for a quick death, I'm afraid I don't offer that kind of courtesy. Kabuto kept smiling, but staring at that form he felt something itching at his backside. Naruto was a scary person. He spoke in a calm and relaxed tone in all situations. You were never going to see him with a shocked expression on his face. Kabuto has been dealing with all kinds of creepy people. He could tell when coming across someone who had the same aura or something in a closer level to his master. The file Danzo had given him had painted a picture about the person before him. Just looking at him now, he could not really say that this person was dangerous. By appearance, the redhead was okay, but senses could detect danger from this person. He'd been ignorant of it before, but right now, Kabuto's senses were telling him to stay away from Naruto. He could not move a step closer to the redhead. He knew if he did so, he was likely to die in the cruelest way Naruto could think of. Just as he said, the Uzumaki wasn't the one for mercy, he was merciless. Kabuto pushed up his glasses before he responded, death is something a bit too far in my thoughts. I was actually just wandering around, looking for something interesting to investigate, and I happened to stumble on you. Naruto didn't buy it. He withdrew his sword as his eyes opened halfway. Kabuto, I will kill you in the next minute if you're still here, and I assure you, the death will be anything more than what Orochimaru can give you. Someone really didn't wake up on the right side of the bed today, Kabuto said playfully. You are being a lot more hostile. You've never even shown me hostility before. The former spy for Ni said in thought. Naruto took a single step forward, and Kabuto disappeared. Following morning, it was a rather rare image to see, and Izumi didn't hide her surprise. She was truly surprised to see Naruto sitting behind a small table with scrolls crowding it. That part didn't really surprise her. During his younger days of training, he actually studied a lot harder than most people. It was also to make up for his ignorance over certain things. What had surprised her in this picture was the serious look on his face. In all her years being Naruto's caretaker, Izumi had rarely seen the redhead with a serious look on his face. For him, it was either a smile or an expressionless mask. He looked so focused that he didn't seem to sense her presence. He wasn't even holding anything, just staring down at the scrolls before him, unmoving. When had he returned from the village anyway? The last time she saw him was yesterday morning before he left for his mission. It was still early in the morning. Could he have returned late at night? Izumi shot down that thought. Naruto wasn't that much of a hard worker for anything that wasn't training or a mission. Even if it was clan matters, he would certainly not work through the night knowing that quick fixes wouldn't help in the long run. Izumi stopped staring at the redhead and walked over to him. He still didn't move a muscle as she sat down in front of him. She didn't say anything immediately, but rather looked down at the scrolls in front of Naruto. It was all just complex seals. When did you return? Izumi asked in a quiet tone, her eyes all over the redhead. Naruto didn't react in that moment. He remained unmoving for a minute or so before lifting his head to fully face Izumi. What she noticed was that his eyes were fully opened, and had a distant look about them. He blinked once, and the distant look on his eyes disappeared. A couple of hours ago, the redhead said as his eyes slowly turned back towards one particular scroll before him. I finished things a lot quicker and decided to get some work done before I choose to rest. There would be rest later on. He just wanted to rest all at once. Besides, this time had been planned for working on the mission. If he finished early, he could still allocate the time to do something productive if his body was allowing him to do so, and with his duties as clan head, there was a lot more to be done. Things went far quicker than you expected, Izumi summarized. She took a pause as she thought over a few things. That could only explain things. She also hadn't been expecting him to be home at this time. If he had returned later on, she would have understood. Yes, Naruto said before Izumi could add anything. A bit disappointing really. Well, at least I won't have to deal with any more mundane duties from now on. My clan position prohibits me from taking any more weak missions. That would mean he would be dealing with serious matters now. Well, it was about time. However, more challenging missions meant that he would be put in serious danger as he would not be facing the opponents he can cut through in seconds or a minute. Well, he would just have to do his best. He wasn't expecting easy things forever anyway. A challenge every now and then was to be expected. But of course he had to come out on top. You didn't complain that much when you were being given the missions, Izumi said. I think you preferred them as they kept you safe and didn't force you out of the comfort zone. Fighting stronger opponents means going all out or risk losing it, the Uzumaki pointed out. Naruto didn't look up to Izumi after she had spoken or when he responded. He merely kept his eyes on the scrolls with his mind working on overdrive. Seals were seriously complex and they got him thinking in levels he never really enjoyed. But it had to be done. He understood their value and realized that they were the Uzumaki's pride. You need not say that. Naruto paused as he closed his eyes, taking a breather. He shoved all the complex calculations at the back of his head and looked back at Izumi with partially opened eyes and spoke. What did I miss yesterday? Itachi left the village with his father to go set up the military corps outside the Hidden Leaf. He will be stationed there for about a month before returning to the village. Your father thought it best since you would be within Konoha around that time. But he should return tomorrow for a report before departing again. Other than that, there was nothing, Izumi reported calmly. My father has been lazy recently, Naruto said and thought. He doesn't want to fight anymore. It is almost as if he's saying he no longer wishes to get his hands dirty and we should do it for him. Well, he is the Hokage, Izumi pointed out. And you have been successful. Besides, he is Konoha's last line of defense. As long as Konoha has its Hokage, it will always stay strong because people still fear him despite his inactivity in the battlefield over the past years. My point remains, Naruto stated. Set up an afternoon meeting with Tsume. Izumi didn't need to guess about why he would want that, she just nodded. It was something that needed to be done to smooth things over. The Sandaime has also requested your presence when you do return. Since you have returned, will you be seeing him after or before Tsume? After, Naruto stood, eyes closed. If anybody asks, I'm not available. Izumi merely nodded, knowing that he meant what he said, and with Naruto, even if it was his mother looking for him, the message would still be the same. Of course his mother wouldn't listen to anything she says, and if he was asleep within the compound, she would wake him up. Perhaps he chose to hide away from the compound because of this. The redhead head Uzumaki sighed as she looked at the mess Naruto had left behind. He was better at looking after himself or his body, but with other things it was another matter. It was strange, you wouldn't find his apartment messy, and Izumi was sure that Itachi didn't clean the place up after Naruto. Izumi had no complaints though as she bundled the scrolls together. She had been doing this for some time, and she was now used to it. At least she didn't have to worry about other things because Naruto had really grown. Izumi, Kushina called, walking into the room that was reserved for the clan head. You woke up early to work? The Yondaime's wife asked as she looked around the room. The walls of the room were surrounded by scrolls. Even though she had occupied the position of clan head, she had never really used any of the scrolls. Naruto and Izuma didn't seem to have the same problems as she did. Her son really had no complaints when it came to studying either. She really wished the same could be said for Karin. Well, at least she wasn't a total loss and Naruto hadn't shown much interest in studying before things changed for him. Perhaps things would change for Karin. In a good way, of course. She didn't wish for another tragedy to strike. It was enough that she had a son who was questionable in many ways and often called evil. Karin had to grow up bubbly, as she currently was. At least Naruto seemed to light that happiness up, and wished for nothing less for his younger sister. It was Naruto-sama who was working, Izumi responded to Kushina. You just missed him. Kushina frowned. If I didn't know any better, I'd say that he just left, because he sensed my presence, the woman said. A small part of her did entertain the thought, which was why she was frowning. Izumi looked up to the elder, Uzumaki, and gave her a stare. Things were not all that smooth between mother and son. They have really never been. Kushina does try all her best to sweeten things, but Naruto was just Naruto. He really didn't need a mother at this point of his life. Or so he keeps saying. Whenever you do try to talk to him, it is always something you don't want, or like about him. You never do try to just relax with him. You always try to be his mother. Izumi said in a quiet tone, trying to be smooth with the woman before him. Well, I am his mother. I know, and Naruto knows. Nothing will ever change that, but you must understand that the current Naruto doesn't want to be mothered. That is all just an annoyance. Even Minato-sama has learned that lesson and knows how to speak to Naruto. He has been ignoring Fugaku-sama because he tries to control him. Naruto likes his independence and doesn't like being told what to do. Kushina stared for a moment, you'd know. She didn't mean it in a bad way or anything. It was just that Izumi has always been around her son and she has been the one running after him since he was young. Minato would also understand because he did spend time with Naruto in the training ground. Izumi could understand Naruto because she really did try to understand him and she knew him. Kushina did not know her own son. She knew her expectations, but not the son she had. She really never tried to understand or look at things from his angle. It was always her angle, and how she would like for things to be. She was an annoyance, huh? Izumi had said so. It was really sad that she could be reduced to that with her own son. Well, things were not over. Naruto wasn't that old, and she's still a lot of years with her. She could change things. Yes, things could change for her and her son. Later. Tsume really could not stop glaring at Naruto. The reason was simple, but it was something that actually happened around with people of this age. It was bound to happen. Perhaps she was just infuriated at how things occurred rather than things actually happening between Hana and Naruto. Her daughter wasn't a little girl anymore. The Inuzuka matriarch growled like mad hound when Naruto's expression just turned blank under her stare with his eyes partly opened, but clearly not focused on her. He was looking at something else, not her, and that bothered her. Why did you bother coming here if you're not even going to be brave enough to face me? The woman demanded. The glint of blue in Naruto's eyes lit slightly as the redhead looked at Tsume. His eyes opened for a second before the eyelids assumed their natural position above the eyeballs. He wasn't smiling, but just wearing a mask that was neither cold nor warm, but just mildly indifferent. My mind was taken by something. You'll have to forgive me for losing concentration at a time like this, Naruto said in a calm tone. I will make it short. I really don't wish for there to be any animosity between our clans. From my last appearance before you, there was some hostility, and I'd like us to resolve that. It wasn't that much of a problem before his eyes, but he had been given the idea of speaking to the woman to smooth things out. No matter what, or his opinions about the Inuzuka clan, Tsume was still a clan head, and in the position he was in, he didn't need to have a clan head giving him a glare over trivial things that could be resolved quickly. Relationships had to be built with other clans, and it would be an annoyance if he couldn't get his way in certain things because there were some unresolved issues. Even the slightest of emotions could stop people from taking a decision, even if it could help them. Naruto didn't want something like that getting in the way. Tsume stared at the redhead for a long minute before she spoke. What do you want, Naruto? Why are you so hostile, Tsume-san? The Uzumaki clan had asked in a very relaxed tone. It sounded almost curious. Even the black-haired woman sitting across him was quick to note it even. I have not had any interactions with you on a personal level, and so I don't know how I could have offended you personally. Though from what you said, it is apparent that this is a matter that includes Hana, but I still don't understand. You wouldn't understand, Tsume said, more or less in a bark. I have seen a lot of people in my life and their expressions. Part of sensing is being able to read people's expressions. Someone like you who reeks of indifference could not understand. Naruto smiled slightly, seeing Tsume's jaws clench. It was almost as if she was biting herself just so she doesn't say anything that could be an insult. She was holding back from calling him names. Well, he wasn't the kind of person one would openly insult. People from this clan could tell more than anyone just how much of a dangerous person he was. Perhaps not. Naruto wasn't going to debate that statement. He just wanted to get this out of the way so that he could focus on really important things. But things must still be resolved. You hold some resentment towards me. Correct. I wouldn't say I resent you, Tsume corrected, but I don't like you very much. It would be correct to say I am just mad at what happened, and more so that it happened with you. Hana is my only daughter, and seeing her hurt hurts me as well. I am a mother, and it is my duty to protect my children. You have a sister, I'm sure you wouldn't want different boys doing to her what you do to other girls. Tsume trained her eyes on the redhead to see his reaction. But there was none, not even a slight twitch of his muscles. Hana isn't a child, you know. Neither am I, Naruto said calmly. There is so much a parent can do, but at some point children have to grow and make their own choices. Good or bad, parents just have to be there to be that helping hand and guiding hand when things become troublesome. Tsume snorted. Naruto was the last person who should be telling her about parenting. He wasn't a parent, and he wasn't all that great with his parents. Listening to you talk isn't making me happy at all, Tsume said calmly. But I do get that nothing can be done about what happened. Perhaps the disappointment is that it happened with you of all people. You're not just any person, you are Uzumaki Naruto, and the things that you present pure. You mean my clan and my father's name? Naruto asked. But I don't represent Namikaze. I am Uzumaki, but I see that from the villagers' perception. Even though I go by Uzumaki, I will always be Namikaze unless I change something, Redhead said calmly. Drea is a perverted old man, but perhaps people have become used to it that it is no longer outrageous. For me, people always try to compare me with my father. It looked like he could not escape that comparison. Naruto didn't like it all. He wanted for one day people to look at him for just his actions, and not try to compare him to Minato because he was his father. It was annoying, and he needed to get rid of that picture. You don't really like that, huh? Tsume managed to smile for the first time since Naruto appeared before her. The Inuzuka shook her head before speaking again. I get what you're trying to say, but as I said, I don't hate you, I'm just angry and I just don't like you. I don't think I ever will. Nevertheless, this will not influence any decision that doesn't need my personal opinion. Sarutobi Compound. The Sandaime Hokage could never really figure out Naruto despite his many years of experience and often cunning mind. He wasn't just hailed as the professor for nothing, but even so, the redhead was a mysterious being before him. Of course he had certain conclusions about the redhead, and one was that Naruto did not possess the will of fire. Perhaps he was wrong, asking about it was the only option that would give him answers. He wasn't going to be brave enough to ask that directly though. What concerned him was that Naruto wasn't driven by the same principles as Itachi or his father. The redhead was a different entity, but of course that didn't mean that he was one to be swayed by mere words. Naruto was uncontrollable at best, and he smiled through most cases. It would be a bit ironic to liken him to a fox, and so the Sandaime did not. Naruto, The old man greeted with a smile as the blonde walked into his library. Naruto smiled and nodded subtly as his partially opened eyes felt the stare of the old man. He hated dealing with the Sandaime because of those eyes that always looked at him as if trying to peer into his soul. It was one of the reasons he could never quite fully open his eyes when it was just the two of them. Smart people were a threat, and he didn't like them. It didn't mean they had to be destroyed, no, if he could avoid them it was fine. They did have their uses after all, and a world without cunning people would be a little sad and boring. The important thing was never to forget the threat that they posed even when they made things interesting. The redhead looked at the bookshelf on his right hand and allowed his eyes to wander through the labels on the books. He took out a book simply labeled as Fundamentals and opened it. He looked at the second page before browsing through it. That is a great book for leaders, the Sandaime Hokage said calmly. I guarantee if you read it, you will learn all that has to be learned about leadership. Everything that is fundamental for a leader is in that book. Naruto closed the book and placed it back where it belonged before sitting across the Sandaime on a chair. I don't care for such books, the Uzumaki clan head responded calmly. I believe that I can be great in my role without leaning on other people's wisdom. I like to stand on my own feet and not rely on other people. Maybe I am just self-absorbed or arrogant. Maybe the Sandaime chose not to say anything definite to keep the conversation. He knew that Naruto wasn't one who liked being told what to do about his life. He chose to live his life in the way he saw fit, not what other people thought it was best lived. But I can assure you, there is no man who can live on his own in this world. We all need each other, and we can't really achieve anything without help from other people. I have lived a long life to be able to tell. Experiences make a man, and they make you understand so many things in life. Some people learn through hearing, and some through personal experiences. I have a lot in terms of experiences. I know the tricks of life. Naruto tilted his head to the side. The Sandaime had obviously gone off topic, and this was something that he wasn't going to entertain for very long. He hadn't come to have a debate with the old man. He knew that the third was an experienced man who has lived through wars and passed so many rough situations, and he hadn't made any argument about it. You were discussing leadership with me, Naruto reminded the old man. He wasn't about to be carried into a conversation he wasn't in the mood to have. The old man could steer a conversation, but Uzumaki Naruto didn't engage in what he didn't want to engage. But enough of that. What is it that you have called me here for? Hiruzen didn't offer his response immediately, it took a minute before he spoke. You are very different from your sister, or your father. You are unlike anyone in your family. Yes, a very unique person indeed. I am not my father, and I am not my sister. Each person is unique. We cannot all be the same, Naruto responded calmly. I strive to be different anyway. The third smiled, no doubt also to stay away from your father's shadow. He paused, as his eyes narrowed, scanning every part of Naruto's face. You have yet to fully escape that, but with how you are going, you will emerge above it. I beg to differ, Naruto had another side to the story. No one compares me to my father. Not in this village, not in Iwo or Kumo. I am known as Uzumaki Naruto, or simply Crimson Uzumaki. To say I have not escaped the shadow of my father is a gross misinterpretation of the reality. Of course Naruto knew that what he was saying was completely different from how he put it with Tsume. Perhaps it was because that was on a personal level. Then again, wasn't it the case in this conversation? He could escape the power shadow, but on a personal, he could not because Minato was his father and nothing would change that. Sarutobi couldn't help but laugh at Naruto's flat response. He hadn't thought the redhead would bluntly put it like that. It was something refreshing and yet at the same time gave him a huge lesson. There had been massive understatements about Naruto's intelligence. He has been questioned, but there wasn't a shred of doubt that the redhead wasn't stupid. Forgive me for that, the Sandaime said as Naruto's expression had remained impassive whilst he laughed. I called you here to talk about your refusal to marry the Godai Mizukage as well as your future role in Konoha. For most shinobi, doing what is best for the village is what comes first. But what is your priority, Naruto? Is it Konoha, your clan, your family, your desires? What is it? The retired Kage asked in a very serious tone. I'm sure by now you have already made a few conclusions about me, Naruto stated calmly. I will not answer your question. You are free to come up with the answer based on your observations. But as it stands, I am a shinobi of the hidden leaf, and I don't see that changing. The redhead then stood up and turned his back on the Sandime. He turned his neck slightly with his eyes looking back at the Sandime. Would that question lead you to question my loyalties, Sandime? If so, I am greatly insulted that you'd find it in yourself to question me. It was up for debate if Naruto meant what he said or not. Well, that was up to the Sandime's thoughts. Judging by the expression and tone, it was safe to conclude that the redhead was indifferent towards his intentions, but that was not the case. He was sure there was more to the story than just that look of indifference. Sarutobi could not even say that he has really achieved anything through this meeting. It looked as if he'd just made things worse. Or just made them bad. His relationship with Naruto had been somewhat just fine, but now he was sure it was going to be indifferent. Perhaps he was losing his touch, and should have left the redhead to his own devices. He had never been able to get in touch with Naruto's feelings as he has with Itachi. Gone are the days he could sit the redhead and show him things about life. This was the reality, and he could not do anything about it. He could only watch and see how it would play out. Uzumaki clan compound. Naruto was settling inside the room that had become his with the assumption of clan head. He had his legs folded while sitting behind a small table that was littered with papers. A blank expression was settled on his face, with his eyes facing the papers in front of him. With being clan head, it came with a load of paperwork, and although Naruto didn't enjoy it, he believed that nobody really did enjoy doing paperwork. It wasn't a fun activity and it took much time. One couldn't just sign off anything, you had to go through the fine prints. With shinobi, not looking at the finer details would get you into serious trouble. He normally had Izumi read through the papers, and he would just sign off where his signature was a necessity. Some work, Izumi just stamped, and they would get it over with. But with delicate things, one had to be careful. This wasn't a battleground where he could scatter dead bodies around and paint them with blood. If only you were so serious about most things in life, and as focused as you're now, our lives would be a lot better, Izumi said as she walked into the room. She really liked this side of Naruto that took his job as clan head very seriously. Although she was forced to carry most of the work when he wasn't around, he still did his fair share of the work. When around, he took charge and actually worked harder than she could. There was always some intensity with the way he does his job. The female redhead, Uzumaki, appreciated the effort. Naruto looked up at Izumi for a moment and tilted his head to the side with his eyes partially opened, but he had opened his eyelids enough for the woman to see them. What do you mean by that, Izumi? Have I been making your life difficult? Izumi shook her head as she sat down in front of her fellow redhead. I don't mean that you have made things difficult, or things are difficult in any way, she stated in a calm tone. I just meant that if you were serious with what you did, we wouldn't have much work to do. You can be a bit careless at times, and that doesn't make things easy. Naruto stared at the woman for a few moments before he stared down the paperwork before him. When it comes to my work, I do things seriously and I have no problems in using all my efforts to get it done, the redhead stated calmly. To be serious with other things is not a necessity, it just makes life too serious, and you will have troubles if you are serious at all times. To be able to enjoy life, you must loosen up a bit, but there are times to be serious as I am now. Naruto could never really see himself being serious at all times. Things would just be wrong if he became like that, and he was sure the whole village would be in panic mode if he suddenly became too serious with everything. It was okay now because there were no people watching, and no one would be able to see him in that form. Izumi smiled. It was a bit refreshing to hear Naruto utter such things about life. Everyone wanted to enjoy life, even Naruto wanted to enjoy his. His responsibilities, as well as the shadow he carried, made things difficult for him. Well, she had never heard him saying anything about wishing to live a normal life. It was perhaps safe to say that he liked his life as it was and wouldn't change it even if a real god came up and offered him the chance to do so. I wish there was more to enjoying life, your life to be precise. We never have those moments. We used to stay together as a family for a night enjoying ourselves with you, your parents, and your sister. It was fun when we used to celebrate our birthdays together. Azumi paused for a moment as she collected a few of her thoughts. When are we going to have those days again? Naruto didn't even think twice before he gave his response. There wasn't even a hint of emotion from his tone as he spoke. Probably never again. We have all moved past those days. I have to say that I did enjoy the family time, but those have just become memories. I have no hopes of it happening again. Even though the whole family is still here. Azumi took her time as she tilted her head to the side, her eyes glued on the clan head, but Naruto had his focused on the paperwork before him. Why do you not have such hopes, Naruto-sama? Naruto looked up at Azumi for a moment before staring at the empty space between them. It took about a minute before he could say anything. Who knows? Perhaps all I see in the near future is just blood and death. The only thing that seems to really hold me is my sister. For her future, I can hope. The clan, you and my parents, you are all here in the present. I don't hope for you guys, but there is a certain faith in me that we will all get to a certain point together, and perhaps then we can smile together. Azumi was curious about this point he was talking about. I dearly care for you and my parents. There is a but. Azumi said, but she did not ask because she was sure that even Naruto could not give her the answer that she needed. There was something that he could answer nevertheless. What is this point? Who knows? Naruto responded with a small smile. It is possibly when he has achieved his greatest ambition and standing atop of all things, Itachi stated in thought as he walked into the small room. That is by no means meaning that he has the grand goal to being Hokage or anything along the lines. But above many things, Naruto is a selfish person. Who isn't selfish, Itachi? Naruto asked quietly. Everyone has an ideal that they want to preserve and something that they want to protect. Humans will do everything to protect and gain what they wish. Even you are willing to commit murder just to protect something, or to stand for your ideal? Whether wrong or right, we will do something in order to get what we want. That is just how life is, and we are willing to go far in order to get what we want. The redhead took a pause as a thought came to mind. Well, there are those who sacrifice their ideals and everything they believe in just for other people. Naruto had no such luxury. He could not become a self-sacrificing person. The dream was to become a legend in his own way. He had no illusions that sometimes legends were called legends after their deaths, and they would have done something ridiculous and against all odds. It was a case of the Sandaime Reikage. The man was a true legend and that no one could take away from him. He could not use the same route as the Sandaime Reikage. He was Uzumaki Naruto, and would do things in his own way, and things that would get him recognized in the elemental nations. He had yet to do anything now. Perhaps it was about time he started playing a risky game. Without entering into dangerous fields, people could not really be convinced of his strength. Itachi raised an eyebrow seeing Naruto smile. It was faint, but he saw it. What are you thinking, Naruto? Naruto stared into Itachi's eyes for a few moments before looking down at this paperwork as he continued to work. I'm amused or excited by the idea of walking into dangerous situations or traps. I have always shied away from difficult situations and dangerous people. It would certainly change a lot of things for him and everything around him. He did not fear death. Perhaps he did fear defeat with everything. Even in this day, Naruto was sure that he'd lose all his will to fight any further if he lost a battle. He had said it before, to him, a defeat to him meant death. Well, given his adventures within the elemental nations, a defeat would surely lead to his death. He was one of those shinobi who were dangerous to be left alive. If he was defeated, the people, because he didn't believe a single person could manage that feat, would certainly finish him off. Amused is the wrong word, I'd say the right feeling is a literal bloody excitement, Itachi said in a calm tone. Naruto glanced at the Uchiha for a moment before tilting his head to the side. I have spilled a lot of blood. Perhaps I do take it to the extreme at times, the redhead said. Well, I am a clan head now, and I must act the part. I must move with grace, and the extreme must be explored when necessary. You're willing to change your fighting style? Naruto shook his head. It is just that when you are known as someone who is bloodthirsty, it is a bit difficult to hold a certain level of respect. People will always connect you with insanity, and that paints a bad image. Now you care about what people say about you? Azumi asked, surprised. Naruto shook his head once again. I don't, but for this clan, I have to do what I must. I can't say that I want to lift this clan to glory then do something contrary. I have to be able to play my part naturally. He paused and looked up to the ceiling for a long minute before speaking again. How are things at your end? My father is setting up outside, the Uchiha said calmly. Things look like they will move smoothly, and if things go well, we can experience some peace. I will have more responsibilities towards the clan now, with my father going to be regularly absent from the village. That should be no problem for you, Naruto said. You've built yourself quite well, but this whole idea of setting up military police outside the village will only cause more trouble. From where I said, it will only escalate things and will give enemies a chance to take us apart one by one. What do you mean by that? Azumi asked curiously. The elemental nations are not the only threats to Konoha. There is the Akatsuki and Orochimaru. We have crossed paths with the latter, and I am sure he has no nice thoughts about us. The former is dangerous, that we know. Imagine if the Tsukikage plots with the Akatsuki and just for good measure Orochimaru joins along and they attack the outside forces. Against all those odds, there will be massive losses. Itachi was surprised that Naruto had such thoughts. If you had such thoughts, why did you not say anything during the council meeting? My father told me that you did not object to it, but only refused to the marriage proposal. Naruto shrugged. It wouldn't have mattered, he said. Besides, I don't make decisions for the village. I will do what is required of me and will refuse to do things I don't want to do. The redhead stated flatly. Itachi stared for a few moments before shaking his head. Perhaps this is why people worried about Naruto. It wasn't so much as his lifestyle, but his careless attitude towards some things that would make anyone with a conscience worry. Itachi had always known that Naruto was not unstable. He might be extreme, but he wasn't insane as some people suggested. This indifferent attitude towards the threats of Konoha could be what has been bothering the Sandaime Hokage, but Minato didn't seem to worry much about it. The Yondaime Hokage was most concerned about Naruto as a person than anything else. It was probable that he knew that his son would always be in the hidden leaf no matter what. Despite everything, even Itachi didn't think that Naruto could actually abandon the leaf. That was just less a worry. He certainly wouldn't want to face Naruto as an enemy. The redhead might like doing things simple, but it wasn't that he failed to grasp the complex things. Azumi just shook her head at the response from her clan head, before speaking on a different matter. Have you looked into the Hyuga's caged bird seal? It didn't matter if they talked clan matters with Itachi present. The Uchiha was an ally, not an enemy, but of course it wasn't everything that she would say in front of him. She was sure even he had his own secrets. I have, Naruto said with a nod. What brought you here, Itachi? We need to do something about Danzo, the Uchiha stated firmly. He is becoming increasingly dangerous by the day, and we have not forgotten what he did. With a war looming large, we simply cannot allow things to continue with him plotting in the shadows. Yes, Naruto said with a nod. That is a matter that has to be dealt with, the redhead stated in a firm tone. We have allowed this one to play along for far too long. We must deal with. Naruto trailed off as a red-masked kunoichi flashed beside him. She was wearing a dark crimson cloak. The kunoichi whispered a few words to Naruto to disappearing. Itachi raised an eyebrow at the presence of the kunoichi. He didn't know anything about the Uzumaki's masked shinobi. This was the first time he was even seeing one. As an ambi captain and a member of the military police force, he ought to know this. Was it possible that the clan had kept something like this hidden from the rest of the village? The Uzumaki's strength was supposed to be depleted. But if there was something like this, then there sure was something they were hiding. Nobody really knew what happened inside the compound anyway. Even to this day, Itachi didn't know where the QB was sealed, or if it was even within the compound. Is something wrong, Naruto-sama? Naruto nodded and stood up. There is a disturbance in the flow of wind. Itachi, you will have to excuse me, there are clan matters that I must handle. Azumi will keep you company until I return. I should go with you if it is something dangerous, Itachi said firmly. Clan matters, Itachi, Naruto stated in a firm tone. It is my responsibilities to deal with annoyances trespassing into my property. You will be called if I need you. The redhead disappeared from the view without another word. Itachi turned to Azumi with serious look about him. What does he mean by that? I am sure no one would be able to infiltrate this compound without getting caught. What else is there that someone can trespass aside from this place? The Uzumaki masked temple in the outskirts of the village, it may not have any valuables as it stands, but underneath it, our secrets are there as well as a certain Bajoa. That's it for this part. If you enjoyed it, then like, share and subscribe for the next video as it's going to be more interesting, and also check out the other playlist. Hope you would like them too.